Chapter 8:16. Young Master Qingchen, you won't even look at me? Dongfang Yu looked at the man in front of her with some grievance. Although she had not interacted with many people since she was young, she knew that she was outstanding and beautiful just by looking at the people around her and the mesmerized gazes of many people after she left the mountain. But why was young Master Qingchen not even willing to look at her? Su Qingchen frowned and did not speak. Dongfang Yu murmured softly, "Young Master. Young Master Qingchen, can you look at me?" Su Qingchen's handsome brows furrowed even tighter. Dongfang Yu's voice was low and gentle, but it made him feel very uncomfortable. It was as if something was about to break out of his mind, and his gaze involuntarily wanted to look at Dongfang Yu. However, Su Qingchen was no ordinary person. After a flash of confusion in her eyes, she regained her composure. He looked at the woman in white in front of him calmly. Her face, which was not very beautiful, seemed to become extremely lively and beautiful in an instant. It was as if in that moment, all the colors faded away, leaving only the woman in front of him alive and beautiful. Young Master Qingchen, am I not beautiful? Can you look at me?" Dongfang Yu looked deeply at Su Qingchen and murmured softly. Su Qingchen stared at Dongfang Yu and did not speak for a long time. Dongfang Yu saw that he was staring at her without moving, and was delighted. She took a step forward, and the smile on her face became even more gentle. "Young Master Qingchen, am I beautiful?" "You are very beautiful." Dongfang Yu was overjoyed and stepped forward again, until she was one step away from Su Qingchen. A faint color appeared between her eyebrows, making her look even more charming. "Young Master, Miss Dongfang, what do you want to say?" Su Qingchen's voice sounded faintly and calmly. "Pfft." Hearing Su Qingchen's voice, Dongfang Yu's eyes suddenly widened, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Su Qingchen took a step to the side, and just happened to avoid the blood that she spat out. In an instant, the charm on Dongfang Yu's face disappeared, and she looked even more embarrassed and weak. The secret art of bewitching people was a double-edged sword. If you could control people, you could naturally do whatever you wanted, and make them obsessed and even obedient. However, if the opponent's mind was firm and unaffected, then the one who would be injured would be the caster himself. Dongfang Yu was interrupted by Su Qingchen's sudden voice at the most critical moment, and suffered instead. For a moment, his complexion turned gloomy, and his internal qi became even more rampant. It was obvious that his internal injuries were not light. "Master Qingchen." Dongfang Yu stared at the man in white in shock. He could not believe that he had failed. He coughed awkwardly and said, "This, probably. Just now, Miss Dongfang used some kind of seduction technique that can seduce men and arouse their desires. This." Master Qingchen broke her seduction technique, and she suffered internal injuries. Then, this internal injury backfired, and she. Master Qingchen did not know martial arts. He frowned and looked at Dongfang Yu. "Is she seriously injured?" The guard lowered his voice and said, "She found a man, and it is not serious." Master Qingchen's handsome face stiffened. He lowered his eyes and thought for a while, then said, "Send her back to Lady Dongfang." Since it was not their responsibility, they did not need to care. As for how Dongfang Hui was going to treat Dongfang Yu, it was none of their business. They did not know any seduction techniques. Hearing Su Qingchen's order, a guard stepped forward and lifted Dongfang Yu off the wall. In the process, Dongfang Yu, who was not in a clear state of mind, took advantage of him several times. In the quiet courtyard, Su Qingchen sat under a big tree with a zither in hand, deep in thought. Not far away, a guard in black stood in the corner, looking at the sky in a daze. After a while, there was a burst of noise outside the courtyard. The guard in black jumped up the wall to take a look, then rushed back to report, Master, Madam, and Lady Dongfang are here." Su Qingchen glanced at him lightly and said, "Stop them first. Let them in after a quarter of an hour." Although the guard did not understand the purpose of Master Qingchen's order, he still obeyed and did as he was told. Under the big tree, Master Qingchen, who was caressing the zither case, had a trace of coldness in his handsome eyes. Sure enough, the guards were very obedient. Just as Su Qingchen stood up and was about to go out, Dong Fenghui had already rushed in with Su Hongyu and Madame Su. Su Qingchen said lightly, "Father, Mother, Lady Dongfang, why are you here?" Because he did not have to go out today, Su Qingchen was dressed very casually. In the eyes of the people who just came in, this casual look was somewhat strange and inappropriate. Dong Fenghui's expression changed slightly. He stared at Su Qingchen and said, "What did you do to you, her?" Chapter 8:17. Before Su Qingchen could say anything, Madame Su was displeased. She glanced at Dong Fenghui unhappily, and her face darkened. What did she mean by what did she do to Dong Fengyu? What could her son do to Dong Fengyu? She was afraid that Dong Fengyu would do something to Qingchen. She walked up to Su Qingchen and looked him up and down. Then she asked, "Qingchen, did Miss Dongfang come here?" Su Qingchen was startled and nodded. "Miss Dongfang came here an hour ago." Madame Su was shocked. She grabbed Su Qingchen and asked, "Are you okay?" This time it was Dong Fenghui's turn to be unhappy. Although Dong Fenghui wanted to do something to Su Qingchen, Madame Su's words made her feel uncomfortable. Just knowing Dong Fenghui's plan, Dong Fenghui wanted to strangle her disciple for the first time in her life. Dong Fenghui was not proficient in the art of enchantment. Although it was the secret art of the Boundless Mountain, Dong Fenghui did not think highly of it. When she was young, she only dabbled in it a little and then gave it up. The prerequisite for the success of this art of enchantment was that the man's mind was not firm enough. But how could Dong Fenghui fall in love with a man who was not firm enough and use this kind of trick to enchant him? So this kind of thing was of no use to Dong Fenghui. When she knew that Dong Fenghui was going to use the art of enchantment to deal with Su Qingchen, Dong Fenghui wanted to cut open Dong Fenghui's head to see what was inside. How could Su Qingchen be controlled by the art of enchantment? He looked gentle, but he was cold-hearted. Dong Fenghui believed that Imo Xiaoyao was controlled by the art of enchantment. She did not believe that Su Qingchen was controlled by the art of enchantment. She was afraid that something would happen to Dong Fenghui. She put down her work and rushed over. Only then did she know that Dong Fenghui had been here for more than an hour and had not come out. For a moment, Dong Fenghui was not sure whether Su Qingchen had been enchanted or not. So she tried to test Su Qingchen, but was stopped by Madame Su. "Master Su, my disciple has come to visit you. We haven't talked for a long time. Do you know where she has gone?" Dong Fenghui asked in a low voice. "This." Su Qingchen pondered for a moment and looked at the three of them hesitantly. Madame Su's heart sank when she saw his troubled expression. She was afraid that her son had really fallen into Dong Fenghui's trap. Su Hongyu frowned slightly and asked, "Did Miss Dongfang leave? When did she leave? Why is she looking for you? Why didn't I see Miss Dongfang at the gatehouse?" No matter how noble Su Hongyu was, he was biased towards his own family. Naturally, he did not want his son to marry a woman like Dong Fenghui. As soon as he opened his mouth, he asked why Miss Dongfang didn't go through the front door when she came to visit. With this clause, even if Su Qingchen and Dong Fenghui really had something going on, the Su family could reject the marriage and let Dong Fenghui marry into the family. Who would want to marry a woman who didn't go through the front door to visit a stranger? Hearing Su Hongyu's words, Dong Fenghui's face turned gloomy. Unfortunately, they were in the wrong, so there was nothing they could say. Su Qingchen calmly looked at the three people with different expressions and said lightly, "Miss Dongfang did come to visit, but she seemed to be unwell because of a sudden illness. I asked someone to send her out just now." "When?" Dong Fenghui asked anxiously. Su Qingchen thought for a moment and said, "About half an hour ago." "What happened to her?" Dong Fenghui cursed in his heart. Su Qingchen said, "I don't quite understand." Miss Dongfang suddenly vomited blood and did not look well. "I think she might have suffered an internal injury when she jumped off the wall." Dong Fenghui secretly gritted his teeth. With Dong Fenghui's martial arts, she might not have suffered an internal injury even if she jumped off a cliff. Where did they leave from? Why didn't anyone see them from outside? Su Qingchen said calmly, because Miss Dongfang came over the wall. The guard probably thought that Miss Dongfang did not want anyone to know that she was here, so he also left from the top of the wall. Young master. A person landed on the top of the wall. It was the guard in black who had carried Dongfang Yu out. The innocent guard who had just been taken advantage of had a slight blush on his face. When he saw that there was a group of people in the courtyard, he could not help but be stunned. First sir, first madam. Where is you, Dongfang Hui asked sternly. The guard was startled. When he reacted, he said, I sent Miss Dongfang out. Sent her back to the post house so quickly. Unless they used Qinggong, it was impossible to go back and forth from the Su residence to the Dongfang residence in such a short time. But no one would use Qinggong to take a girl out in broad daylight. The guard shook his head. I met Prince Li outside. He said that he was going to visit Madam at the Dongfang residence, so he sent Miss Dongfang back. You handed to Mo Jingli. Dongfang Hui said sternly. The guard in black felt wronged. It was Miss Dongfang who agreed to let Prince Li send her back. Did they have to send Miss Dongfang back? Even if they sent her back, she would not be sent back to Madame Dongfang. It would be too late for Madame Dongfang to think of a way to save Miss Dongfang. Madame Su did not care what happened to Dongfang Yu, as long as her son was fine. She would rather Qingchen not marry a wife in this life than marry that Dongfang Yu. Madame Su smiled and tidied her son's clothes. She scolded, You child, why didn't you change your clothes before coming out when there were guests? I know I was wrong. Su Qingchen did not refute but smiled faintly. Dongfang Hui was not in the mood to see their mother-son relationship. She cupped her hands to Su Hongyu with a cold face. Brother Su, goodbye. Su Hongyu nodded faintly. I won't see you out. After sending Dongfang Hui away, Su Hongyu looked at Su Qingchen thoughtfully. He asked, Did Mo Jingli happen to meet Dongfang Yu, or did Dongfang Yu happen to meet Mo Jingli? Su Qingchen smiled faintly. Father, what's the difference? Su Hongyu thought for a while and said faintly, Don't you understand what the difference is? Dongfang Yu. Su Qingchen smiled. Dongfang Yu did not lose her mind. Even if something happened to her, it has nothing to do with the Su family and the Prince Ding mansion. Looking at his son's calm appearance, Su Hongyu nodded with satisfaction. Well done. Dongfang Yu dared to plot against the Su family. She deserved whatever happened to her. The people of the Su family had never been soft-hearted and kind enough to repay evil with good. Chapter 8:18. Dongfang Hui rushed to the inn where Mo Jingli was staying, but she did not see Mo Jingli and Dongfang Yu. She could not help but look even worse. She left the inn and went to Dongfang Mansion. This time, she was not alone. Unfortunately, the scene she saw when she entered almost made Dongfang Hui vomit blood. In Dongfang Yu's room, she saw the messy clothes on the floor as soon as she entered. Dongfang Hui's face darkened. She waved away the servants behind her and walked in. Sure enough, she saw a man and a woman lying on the bed. The woman's face was red and her eyes were closed. Obviously, she was still in a deep sleep. There was also a strong musky smell in the room, reminding Dongfang Hui of what had just happened. Mo Jingli. Dongfang Hui gritted her teeth. When Dongfang Hui entered, Mo Jingli opened his eyes. Seeing Dongfang Hui's expression, he was not afraid. He sat up and said calmly, Madam Dongfang, could you please leave for a moment? Dongfang Hui's face was as cold as ice. She waved her sleeve and said hatefully, Prince Li better give me a reasonable explanation. While they were talking, Dongfang Yu gradually woke up. She was stunned when she saw her master's angry expression. She then realized that she was lying in Mo Jingli's arms and screamed. Dongfang Hui said coldly, Shut up. You still have the nerve to scream? Come out immediately when you're done. After that, she turned and left. Dongfang Yu was completely dumbfounded by this sudden turn of events. Her head was in a mess and she could not remember what happened after she failed to bewitch Su Qingchen. But she knew what had happened to her just by looking at the situation in front of her. "Mo Jingli, how dare you? I'm going to kill you!" Dongfang Yu shouted. She did not care that the two were still on the bed. She waved her hand and slapped Mo Jingli's head. Mo Jingli's martial arts might not be as good as Dongfang Yu's, but Dongfang Yu's internal injuries had not healed and she had just experienced such a thing. She was powerless. Mo Jingli raised his hand and grabbed her wrist, holding her tightly in his arms. "Mo Jingli, I'll kill you. I will definitely kill you." Dongfang Yu's eyes were red with anger. She really couldn't understand why her well-planned plan had turned out like this. Not only had she failed to bewitch Su Qingchen, but she had also been taken advantage of by Mo Jingli. She also knew that she had completely lost the chance to make Su Qingchen accept her. The Su family had a century-old scholarly reputation. How could Su Qingchen, the first young master in the world, marry a withered woman? As soon as he thought of this, Dongfang Yu wanted to tear Mo Jingli into pieces and eat his flesh. Mo Jingli held Dongfang Yu's hands tightly and said unhappily, "Have you had enough?" Originally, he had intended to treat Dongfang Yu well. After all, Dongfang Yu's status and ability were not bad. More importantly, obtaining her would mean obtaining the support of Infinite Boundless Mountain. As long as Dongfang Yu was obedient, he would naturally treat her well. However, he didn't expect that the moment this woman woke up, she would shout at him and curse him. Had this woman forgotten that she was already his woman? So what if she made a fuss? "You're making a fuss now. You shouldn't have stuck to I before." Mo Jingli laughed coldly and said mockingly. The fragmented and intermittent scenes in her mind made Dongfang Yu's expression extremely ugly. Hearing Mo Jingli's words, she was so angry that her entire body trembled. Mo Jingli was right. She had stuck to Mo Jingli of her own accord from the start. Even if it wasn't her true wish, it couldn't change this fact. Seeing that she was no longer making a fuss, Mo Jingli then let go of her and got off the bed. He took his clothes from the side and calmly put them on. As he bent over to look at Dongfang Yu, he said, "Since things have come to this, as long as you are obedient, I will naturally treat you well. As for young Master Qingchen, who you've been longing for, he clearly knew that you were suffering from an internal injury as if you had been drugged with an aphrodisiac. Didn't he still throw you out without hesitation? Don't tell me you still miss him." Slap! Dongfang Yu slapped Mo Jingli hard across the face. "Bastard!" Mo Jingli's eyes turned cold, but he quickly suppressed his monstrous anger. He stood up and looked at her. "Since you're awake, get up quickly. Your master is waiting outside. I won't marry you." Dongfang Yu stared at him hatefully and said through gritted teeth. Mo Jingli didn't care. "Now, who else wants you besides me?" Outside, in the hall of the Dongfang mansion. Dongfang Hui had already dismissed all the attendants. She sat alone and listened, frowning as she pondered. Her face, which still had the wind and clouds, was full of malice. This move by the Su family was really too ruthless. It also really cut off the last glimmer of hope that Dongfang Hui had for the Prince Ding mansion and the Su family. Although Su Qingchen said it as if it was completely an accident, Dongfang Hui wouldn't believe that it was so simple. Dongfang Yu's technique failed, and she suffered from internal injuries. Su Qingchen got someone to send her back, but just happened to bump into Mo Jingli. Then, Mo Jingli naturally became the person to treat Dongfang Yu's injuries. Everything seemed normal, but her senses and intuition, which had been in charge of Infinite Boundless Mountain for decades, told her that this was definitely not a coincidence. Actually, after Dongfang Hui had rejected Ren Qining in her heart, there weren't many choices left for Infinite Boundless Mountain. Either everyone returned to Infinite Boundless Mountain to hide from the world, or they could only choose Mo Jingli. But choosing on her own and being forced to choose like this were two completely different feelings and results. This feeling of being calculated and coerced not only made Dong Fanghui hate her disciple for not knowing her limits, but also Mo Jingli for taking advantage of the situation. She even hated Su Qingchen for being heartless and scheming against Dong Fangyu. Thinking deeper, this was the Prince Ding Mansion's disdain and contempt for infinite boundless mountain. Madam, Princess Ding and the second madam of the Su family have come to visit. The attendant outside hurriedly reported. Dong Fanghui frowned. Yi Li choosing to visit at this time was really a little too much of a coincidence. Thinking for a while, Dong Fanghui asked, "Did Princess Ding say why she came?" The attendant said, "Princess Ding said that she heard that Miss Dongfang's body was not in good health, and specially came to visit with the second madam of the Su family." At this time, Dong Fanghui didn't want to tell Yi Li, but the one who came with Yi Li was the second madam of the Su family. This made Dong Fanghui suspect that Yi Li already knew the truth of the matter. After a moment of silence, she sighed somewhat dejectedly, "Since it's already like this, forget it, invite Princess Ding in." Not long after, Yi Li and Qin Jing walked in hand. Looking at Dong Fanghui's unhappy face, Yi Li acted as if she didn't see it. She said with a smile, "Yi Li is presumptuous to visit, please forgive me, Madam Dongfang." Dong Fanghui's gaze paused on Qin Jing for a while, and then she said, "Princess, you're too serious. It's an honor for you and the second madam to come." Qin Jing actually didn't know much. She only heard a few words about Dong Fangyu's actions from the eldest madam of the Su family. And during this period of time, Dong Fangyu pestered Su Qingchen. Qin Jing also heard about it. Even so, she didn't expect Dong Fangyu to have the guts to break into the Su family and scheme against Su Qingchen. Even though Qin Jing usually came into contact with women with different personalities like Yi Li and Murong Ting, and heard a lot of strange things, she was still frightened by Dong Fangyu's actions. Not to mention that Su Qingchen was her uncle, just the name of young Master Qingchen was enough to make all the young ladies of the Dechu state admire him. Su Qingchen was also known as the immortal young master. It could be imagined that a woman who was worthy of him would not be an ordinary woman. For someone like Dong Fangyu, not to mention Su Qingchen himself and the Su family, even the young ladies of Li City would not be convinced. Chapter 819. Miss Dongfang came to visit the Su mansion, but Qin Jing couldn't receive her personally. She even let Miss Dongfang leave the mansion with illness. Mother-in-law has already reprimanded Qin Jing. "Our Su family is not a good host. Please forgive us, Mrs. Dongfang. I don't know how Miss Dongfang is. Please let Qin Jing see Miss Dongfang so that I can apologize to her face to face." Qin Jing looked at Dong Fanghui and said apologetically. Her words were polite, but it didn't sound polite. Dong Fangyu, a girl, should naturally be received by the youngest lady of the Su family, the second madam. But no one in the Su family had seen Dong Fangyu. How did Miss Dongfang come to the Su mansion? Why did she go to the Su mansion? Since you don't want to go through the front door and follow the etiquette of a guest, then if something happened to Dong Fangyu, naturally it wouldn't be the Su family's business. What's more, Dong Fangyu didn't have an accident in the Su family. The Su family sent the second lady to visit in person, which was already very benevolent. Dong Fanghui smiled coldly. The second lady of the Su family was unknown. She didn't expect her to be so eloquent. "You is a little unwell, but it's not a big deal. It's just that she was resting just now. I'm afraid she can't see you. It's better to wait for her to get better, and then invite you to have a small gathering." Qin Jing smiled and didn't force her. Yi Li smiled and said, "In this case, we shouldn't disturb Miss Dongfang's rest. But, when we were outside, we happened to meet Princess Xixia. She said that His Highness King Li has come to your mansion and hasn't returned. Mrs. Dongfang, please tell His Highness King Li that Princess Xixia seems to be looking for him for something urgent. If there's nothing, he should go back quickly. Otherwise, Princess Xixia will come to the Dongfang mansion soon." Princess Xixia. Dong Fanghui's face darkened slightly. She said lightly, "Why don't I remember which country's Princess Xixia?" Yi Li smiled apologetically. I forgot. It's Miss Shisha. This girl has been with King Li for many years. She is deeply trusted by him. Since the message has been delivered, I and Zheng Er will leave first. Mrs. Dongfang, please send our regards to Miss Dongfang. Yi Li stood up and prepared to leave. Before Dongfang Hui could say anything, she saw Mo Jingli standing at the door. Seeing Yi Li and Qin Zheng, Mo Jingli's eyes flashed. Prince Ding Mansion and young Madame Su are also here. Yi Li's calm eyes swept over Mo Jingli, and a faint smile appeared on her lips. I heard that Miss Dongfang is not feeling well, so I came to visit. So Prince Li is indeed in the Dongfang estate. It was rare for Mo Jingli to feel a little uncomfortable. Using such a method for the sake of infinite boundless mountain's power, it naturally could not be considered as just and honorable. Especially when he was in the Prince Ding mansion and did not even care about such things, he still valued her so much that he did not hesitate to use such despicable means. Naturally, people who saw this would feel that they were at a disadvantage. However, no matter how proud and arrogant Mo Jingli was, he still understood that he was not Mo Xiaoyao. Mo Xiaoyao could disdain infinite boundless mountain's power, and did not want their support, but he, Mo Jingli, could not. Although he was unwilling, he had no choice but to face this reality. However, under such circumstances, when facing Yi Li, Mo Jingli could not help but feel embarrassed. In this world, the thing he was most unwilling to lose face in front of Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li. However, the heavens did not go as he wished. Miss Dongfang is fine. She can come out to see you in a while. Mo Jingli said. No matter what, since things had already reached this point, he naturally had to confirm this matter first. As long as this matter was confirmed, Mo Jingli was not worried that Dongfang Hui would go back on her words and not help him. If Dongfang Hui went back on her words, then Infinite Boundless Mountain's reputation of being chosen by the heavens would also become a shadow. Both Infinite Boundless Mountain and Dongfang Hui could not afford to lose face like this. Oh? Yi Li's eyes turned slightly, her smile tranquil. Looks like we seem to have missed something. Or is it that Infinite Boundless Mountain's joyous occasion is approaching? That's right, Mo Jingli said in a low voice. When the time comes, Princess Ding and Prince Ding can come and have a drink together. Yi Li laughed inwardly. Mo Jingli indeed valued Infinite Boundless Mountain greatly, actually intending to hold the wedding directly in Glass City. If Prince Li intends to hold the wedding in Glass City, Prince Ding and I would naturally be honored. Congratulations, Prince Li. Mo Jingli looked deeply at Yi Li, saying in a low voice, many thanks. Mo Jingli, don't even think about it. I'll never marry you. Yi Li and Mo Jingli's side were very harmonious, but outside the door, Dongfang Yu's voice had long since lost its usual calmness and gentleness, and was instead a little sharp and piercing. Everyone turned back, and saw Dongfang Yu standing at the door, glaring angrily at Mo Jingli, who was talking to Yi Li, with red eyes. Qin Zheng looked at Dongfang Yu with some surprise. The previous few times they met, she always felt that Dongfang Yu was like a fake soulless dummy. Now, however, the angry white-clothed woman seemed more real. It was just that the light purple marks on her low neckline made Qin Zheng blush involuntarily, and she hurriedly lowered her head, too embarrassed to look again. You, Dongfang Hui reprimanded in a low voice, displeased. Dongfang Yu was startled, and looked at Dongfang Hui full of grievance, saying, Master, I don't want to marry this beast. Mo Jingli's expression changed, and he looked at Dongfang Yu with the same displeasure, saying, Dongfang Yu, don't think that you're the only one who is wronged. Are you blaming I for this matter? You made yourself into this state, I can be considered your savior. Dongfang Yu gritted her teeth, saying, I don't need a bastard like you to save me. Mo Jingli laughed coldly, saying, you want others to save you, but they don't want to bother with you at all. Or maybe Miss Dongfang likes to randomly grab people on the streets. Dongfang Yu's face paled. Compared to having sex with Mo Jingli, if she was really thrown on the streets, no one knew better than Dongfang Yu the power of the backlash from the internal injury. If that was really the case, she really could be on the streets. Enough. Dongfang Hui interrupted her, saying coldly, haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Dongfang Yu was startled, and looking at the cold expression on Dongfang Hui's face, she finally couldn't help but fall to the side of the table and sob. Yi Li sat at the side and watched, and couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Compared to the infinite boundless mountain's successor who had a high and mighty face, and advised everyone according to the script, this crying girl in white was much more adorable. Unfortunately, this matter was completely her own fault. Using such a charm to control Su Qingchen, the Su family naturally couldn't sacrifice themselves to save her, so Dongfang Yu's tragedy was already doomed from the moment she had such thoughts. Dongfang Hui looked down, hiding the emotions in her eyes, and then looked at Yi Li, saying, Princess Ding, I still have some things to deal with here. I won't be entertaining Princess and second young Mistress Su. Yi Li also tactfully stood up and smiled, saying, We've disturbed you, Mistress Dongfang, please do as you please. I'll take my leave. After bidding farewell to Dongfang Hui and Mo Jingli, Yi Li and Qin Jing had just walked out of the door when they heard Dongfang Hui's exasperated reprimand coming from inside. Dongfang Hui had been in charge of the infinite boundless mountain for more than 20 years, and she had a steady personality. To be angered to the point that she couldn't wait for the guests to leave before scolding, it showed that she was very angry with Dongfang Yu. Chapter 820. After leaving Dongfang Hu, Yi Li and Qin Zheng looked at each other and smiled. Qin Zheng asked curiously, will Madame Dongfang really marry Miss Dongfang to Prince Li? I think Madame Dongfang and Miss Dongfang are not happy about it. Yi Li smiled, Miss Dongfang is really not happy about it. As for Madame Dongfang, she is just not happy about Dongfang Yu marrying Mo Jingli under such circumstances. If Dongfang Hui was not willing to return to the infinite boundless mountain and wait for the next 60 or 70 years, Mo Jingli was her only choice. As long as it dragged on, she would agree to assist Mo Jingli sooner or later. But that was the infinite boundless mountain's choice of master. The infinite boundless mountain stood at the top of the hierarchy. And now Mo Jingli and Dongfang Yu had such a relationship. Dongfang Yu had to marry him even if she did not want to. But the relationship between the two families was probably a little awkward. And in the hearts of the scholars in Dechu State, the status of the infinite boundless mountain would plummet. Needless to say, with Dongfang Yu's character and temper, she would definitely not work hard to assist the future holy concubine Xian. And this was the purpose of Yi Li and the Prince Ding mansion. How could the Prince Ding mansion give Mo Jingli such a big gift for no reason? And now, this big gift looked very nice, but who knew when it would become a ticking time bomb? This Miss Dongfang also brought this upon herself. She is a good girl. Qin Jing sighed. Although Dongfang Yu looked miserable, Qin Jing would not give her any sympathy. She wanted to manipulate people's hearts just because she had some special skills. She even disregarded the wishes of others to marry her. Such a person could only be said to reap what she sowed. Yi Li smiled, even if today did not happen, I'm afraid that Madame Dongfang will marry her to Mo Jingli soon. Second sister-in-law, you don't have to feel sorry for her. Qin Jing smiled and said, I won't feel sorry for her. As long as she doesn't harm our Su family, it doesn't matter who she marries. Yi Li nodded in agreement. Exactly. Sure enough, a day later, Dongfang Hui announced the marriage between Mo Jingli and Dongfang Yu. Dongfang Yu would marry Prince Li as his official wife. The news from Dongfang Manor and Princely Post House had specially emphasized that she was the official consort and not the equal consort. Although the equal consort was not considered a concubine, she was still inferior to the Di Fei. While Mo Jingli had promised not to cripple Yi Ying, Infinite Boundless Mountain would not suffer such grievances. Thus, both sides compromised and took over. Both were official concubines of the same age. Mo Jingli was now the regent of the Dechu state, so he naturally did as he pleased. Following that, he issued an edict, naming Yi Ying as consort Rong and Dongfang Yu as consort Min. Both of them were the regent's official consorts. Why do I feel that Mo Jingli was mocking them by giving them this title? Yi Li asked after receiving the news that Mo Jingli had conferred the title of regent's official consort. Yi Ying had no one to rely on in the Dechu state. She had no children and no favor. How could she bear the title of Rong? And Dong Fengyu had schemed against others, but she had schemed against herself. The title of Min was more like a joke. Mo Xiaoyao said nonchalantly, maybe it's because Mo Jingli wants Yi Ying to live a prosperous and stable life. At the same time, he also wants Dong Fengyu to grow some brains. For something like a title, if it's not reality, then it's hope. Yi Li smiled and casually threw the letter on the table. She smiled, I was still thinking about how to deal with the matter of Dong Fengyu and the Boundless Mountain. I didn't expect it to be resolved so easily. Mo Xiaoyao said with a smile, it's all because of young Master Qingquan's unparalleled wisdom. The way he pushed the boat with the current is admirable. On the other side, Su Qingquan, who was writing with his head lowered, raised his head and said with a faint smile, if it wasn't for Prince wanting to watch the show, how could there be such an effect? If it wasn't for Mo Xiaoyao suddenly wanting to see if young Master Qingquan could resist the temptation of the art of enchantment, and not letting the guards act first, Dong Fengyu wouldn't have had the chance to use the art of enchantment on him. Naturally, there wouldn't have been such a thing afterwards. So, at the end of the day, Prince Ding was the real culprit. Mo Xiaoyao didn't feel embarrassed at all when his bad intentions were exposed. He rubbed Yi Li's hair and said with a smile, that's why we know that young Master Qingquan's mental fortitude is rare in the world. Back then, Dong Fengyu had only used a little bit of it in public, and even many experts with profound internal energy were affected. But this time, it was only targeted at Su Qingquan alone. Even after using all his strength, he still failed. It was enough to see how firm young Master Qingquan's willpower was. Or it could be said that it was enough to see how cold-hearted and emotionless young Master Qingquan was. Other than those who already had someone in their heart and didn't care about the beauty of the world, only those who were truly cold-hearted and emotionless could be so indifferent to such temptation. It seemed that it was still too early for the Su family to see young Master Qingquan settle down and start a family. Su Qingquan smiled faintly and said, Prince Ding, you flatter me. Something is going to happen at the border. Su Qingquan's hand that was holding the booklet paused. Mo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows. Su Qingquan said, as soon as Yilu Yi left Feihong Pass, he began to gather his troops. I'm afraid he wants to fight with us again before winter arrives. Mo Xiaoyao was startled by this, but he wasn't surprised. Where's Ren Qining? Yi Li frowned and said, Ren Qining already said goodbye this morning. She should have left Glass City by now. Mo Xiaoyao lowered his eyes and thought for a moment. He looked at Yi Li with a smile and said, Li, we have to prepare for war again. This time, it's the time of Yilu Yi and Helianjin's death. A cold light flashed through his eyes. Yi Li was startled and said with a smile, okay, let's go together. Chapter 821. After the announcement of the marriage between the Li King Manor and Infinite Boundless Mountain, because the dignitaries of the various countries had already left, this marriage did not cause much of a stir. And as the main character of this marriage, probably only Mo Jingli was truly happy. Him choosing to hold this wedding in Glass City was more or less a show of force to the Prince Ding mansion. But thinking that it was the Prince Ding mansion that had rejected Infinite Boundless Mountain first, giving him this chance, this show of force could not help but become a little more awkward and boring. Along with this, his originally extremely respectful and careful attitude towards Infinite Boundless Mountain had also become 70%. Compared to Dong Fengyu's resentment and rejection of marriage, Dong Fenghui's mood was similarly bad. Actually, after the Prince Ding mansion had rejected her proposal and she had rejected Ren Qining, Infinite Boundless Mountain's only choice was Mo Jingli. But choosing Mo Jingli and marrying the descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain was a world of difference from the current situation. Originally, when Dong Fengyu had married into the Li King Manor, Infinite Boundless Mountain was naturally still high and mighty. But after this matter, when she married into the Dechu state, the feeling among the officials was completely different. And Infinite Boundless Mountain could not even do anything to reject Dong Fangyu's marriage. While the matter between Mo Jingli and Dong Fangyu had not been made known to the entire world, those who should know were already aware of it. Faced with such a grievance, Infinite Boundless Mountain had no other choice but to swallow it. These messy matters caused Dong Fanghui to be extremely vexed, and even the Prince Ding mansion and the Su family were angered to the point of hating them. Actually, after the Prince Ding mansion had rejected Infinite Boundless Mountain's situation had already been a little delicate. If they did not immediately stop caring about these matters and return to Infinite Boundless Mountain to hide from the world, they could only choose another person to assist them. But in this way, Infinite Boundless Mountain's reputation of being chosen by the heavens would be greatly damaged. Originally, they had chosen the Prince Ding mansion, but the Prince Ding mansion ignored them, so they chose someone else. This meant that this so-called ruler of the world was not fixed at all. Since that's the case, with all the heroes vying for supremacy relying on their own abilities, why should your Infinite Boundless Mountain be the one chosen by the heavens? It was also because of this that the news of Mo Jingli marrying Dong Fangyu did not cause too much of a stir. The power of Infinite Boundless Mountain naturally caused others to be envious, jealous, and hateful. However, with the addition of Infinite Boundless Mountain, many people could also clearly see the drawbacks. It was just that he couldn't let go of the reputation of being the chosen one. Since Infinite Boundless Mountain's so-called reputation was now mostly empty talk, a bunch of ignorant women no longer seemed so important. While Mo Jingli and the Dongfang family were busy preparing for the wedding, the Prince Ding mansion was not idle either. From Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li to the ordinary soldiers of the Mahist army, all of them were preparing for battle. The high-ranking generals of the Prince Ding mansion were even more clear that this battle was a true battle to the death with the Northern Tribe's army, to avenge the death of the previous Prince Ding Mo Xiaowen when the Mahist army was almost annihilated that year. Not a single soldier of the Northern Tribe's army who had stepped into the pass would be able to return. Inside the Nanzhao post house, Yi Li and Princess Anqi sat opposite each other, leisurely sipping tea. Princess Anqi's belly was already not small, and it was obvious that she was going to be a healthy and strong little prince or young master. Princess Anqi's usually bright and cheerful face now had a hint of gentleness and grace. No matter how powerful a woman was, as long as she was going to be a mother, she would always have some gentleness and love on her face. I've been busy these past few days, and now that I finally have some free time, I'm going on a long journey again. I actually can't entertain you properly. Yi Li looked at Princess Anqi with an apologetic smile. As the queen of a kingdom, Princess Anqi naturally didn't have the same topics of conversation as the other women. However, Yi Li was also very busy these past few days, and she was somewhat lacking in hospitality. Princess Anqi said with a smile, "You and I are both people with no choice, why are you apologizing? Are you also planning to go to war with Prince Ding this time?" Yi Li nodded and said, "Of course." Although she was worried about the two newborn children, Yi Li was even more worried about Mo Xiaoyao, who was going to the battlefield. Last time, he almost lost control in West Hill, and this time, he was going to face the northern tribes and Helian Zhen, who had almost massacred half of the northern Dechu state, and who had a deep hatred for the Mahist army. How could Yi Li be at ease if she did not go with him? Speaking of which, she felt a little sorry for the three children, as Mo Xiaobao had been raised by the Su family these past few years. Now, the two children were only 2 months old, and they were going to war again. The children had to be taken care of by first aunt and second aunt. Speaking of which, back then, I also wanted to gallop onto the battlefield, but I didn't expect you to be one step ahead of me. Princess Anqi sighed with a smile. Ding Wangfei can be said to be the first female general in the world. Yi Li smiled helplessly and said, "What female general, when have I really led troops to war? I just followed along and watched." Princess Anqi smiled and said, "Yes, how could Prince Ding allow you to lead troops to break through the enemy lines? Wang Fei should have been the strategist who came up with all the strategies. Isn't there a saying in the Central Plains, fierce generals are easy to find, but strategists are hard to find?" Yi Li was silent. Was there such a saying in the Central Plains? After a moment of silence, Yi smiled and said, "Now that the Central Plains is in chaos, it is the queen who is leisurely away from the world, making people envious." Nanjiang was remote and had been a barren land since ancient times. While the past emperors of the Central Plains liked to fight, no matter who ruled, no one had truly conquered them. It was not that Nanzhao was very powerful. While Nanzhao's people were valiant, it was a small and barren country with not many soldiers. The past emperors attacked Nanzhao either because Nanzhao had violated the border, or because they wanted to expand their territory in times of peace, to add flowers to the brocade in the history books. No one would truly use all the power of the country to attack Nanzhao. Because even if they succeeded, they would gain more than they paid. Once war broke out, the heroes would not have the mind to care about Nanzhao. They would fight for the rich lands of the Central Plains, so who would have the time to care about a small country on the border? It seems that the queen really does not have the mind to participate in this chaotic world? Yi Li asked with a smile. Actually, she could understand Princess Anqi's thoughts. Although Princess Anqi had the talent to govern a country, she lacked the domineering and ambitious nature of a woman who desired to expand her territory and achieve great things. This was not a bad thing for the people of Nanzhao. While Nanzhao's army was strong, there were only a few 100,000 people in the country. There were also many tribes that did not listen and did their own things. In this chaotic war that could break out at any moment, Nanzhao's participation would only be cannon fodder. Princess Anqi shook her head and stroked her belly. She smiled and said, "I only hope that the people of Nanzhao can live and work in peace. My child will be born and grow up safely. In the future, when the throne is passed to him, his life will be complete." Yi Li sighed softly and said, "Ordinary people only seek peace in their lives. If the queen can protect the people under her rule, she will have done a great service." Princess Anqi smiled and said, "Now that the Central Plains is in chaos, only the people under Prince Ding and the queen can live in peace and do not have to worry about the suffering of war. It is no wonder that on our way up north, the people in many places remember Prince Ding and the queen." Chapter 822. Yi Li smiled faintly at Princess Anqi's praise. In life, it was enough to protect the peace of the people. As for merits and demerits, there was no need to care so much. "Reporting to your Majesty, Princess Consort. There is a woman who calls herself Princess Shixia outside the door requesting an audience." The attendant outside the door respectfully reported. Hearing the attendant's words, Princess Anqi frowned slightly and said with some displeasure, "What is she doing here?" Princess Anqi's heart had turned cold towards this sister of hers. Princess Shixia was her only biological sister, but when she fought with Xu Manlin in their youth, it was so difficult and dangerous. It was fine if Princess Shixia didn't help her, but because of Mo Jingli, she even helped Xu Manlin against her. In the end, she ran to the Dechu state and refused to come back, losing the face of the Nanzhao royal family. Even when the two sisters met in Glass City this time, Princess Shixia's words were filled with dissatisfaction and jealousy towards her older sister. Princess Shixia only remembered that she was made the crown princess and inherited the throne of Nanzhao. However, she didn't think about the hardships she had gone through when she was framed by Xu Manlin and suppressed by her father. It was better not to have a sister like this. Forget it, she should be returning to Jiangnan with King Li in a few days. "Let her in," Princess Anqi said faintly. The attendant accepted the order and left. Yi Li stood and said, "You sisters reminisce, I'll take my leave first." Princess Anqi hurriedly pressed down her hand and said, "I don't have much to say to her. You're about to go to war and I don't know when we'll meet again. Just sit down." Yi Li originally wanted to leave some space for the two sisters to talk alone. Seeing Princess Anqi like this, she didn't refuse and sat down again. Not long after, Princess Shixia walked in. Seeing Yi Li sitting there, she was startled. Then she walked in front of Princess Anqi and called out timidly, "Royal sister." Princess Shixia was 28 or 29 years old this year. Although she was still beautiful, she was no longer a young girl. This appearance made her look less delicate and pitiful. Instead, it made her look more pretentious. Princess Anqi frowned slightly and pointed to the chair next to her. Why are you here? Sit down and talk. Princess Xixia didn't get the desired effect. She lowered her head in disappointment, walked to the chair Princess Anqi pointed at and sat down. Princess Anqi asked, what happened? Princess Xixia bit her lips and said with red eyes, Prince Li is going to marry Dongfang Yu. Please help Xixia, royal sister. A trace of gloominess flashed across Princess Anqi's brows. In this short period of time, Princess Xixia had come to the courier station a few times. This was something that even Yi Ying could not compare to. But it was really hard to say how big of a place Princess Xixia occupied in Mo Jingli's heart. After so many years, if Mo Jingli really wanted to, he would at least be able to give Princess Xixia the title of Prince Consort, instead of letting her stay in the princely manner so awkwardly and without status. Now that the descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain had married into the princely manner, Dongfang Yu was no longer the Yi Ying who had no one to rely on. It was no wonder that Princess Xixia was anxious. Princess Anqi looked at Princess Xixia, asking, how do you want me to help you? Princess Xixia's eyes lit up as she hurriedly said, as long as royal elder sister agrees to form an alliance with the Dechu state. My Nanzhao's strength is not inferior to Infinite Boundless Mountains. This way, you can naturally ask the Prince Li to formally take me as his consort, impudent. Hearing this, Princess Anqi could not help but fly into a rage. Looking coldly at Princess Xixia, she said, I thought that you had matured over these years. I didn't think that you would still be so mischievous. You want me to drag the entire Nanzhao and its sons into the flames of war of the Central Plains for your personal matters? As the princess of the Nanzhao, have you ever done anything for the people of the Nanzhao? What do they owe you? For your position alone, you want to risk your life? Being reprimanded so mercilessly by Princess Anqi, Princess Xixia was also stunned. Staring blankly at Princess Anqi, she said, Royal elder sister, Princess Anqi waved her hand to stop her from speaking, saying mildly, you don't need to say any more. If that Prince Li of yours is really a good person, I wouldn't mind taking a gamble for you. But let me tell you the truth. I don't think highly of him. If you are willing, you can return to the Nanzhao with me this time and find a good man to marry. Even if you are not a princess, no one in the Nanzhao will dare to bully you. As for other things, you don't need to think about them. Chapter 823. How could Princess Anqi not know that her life in the Dechu state would not be good in the future? But for her to give up on the southern Zhao kingdom was something she could not do no matter what. She had sacrificed too much for Mo Jingli. Not to mention other things, just these 10 years of her life was something that could not be made up for. If she left just like this, then what was the point of these 10 years of her life? Looking at Princess Anqi, she saw that she had already lowered her head and was caressing her protruding belly, no longer paying attention to her. Princess Xixia knew that she could not persuade Princess Anqi, and could not help but cry, Royal sister, you are so cruel. She turned and ran out. Princess Anqi stared blankly at her departing figure, and could only sigh helplessly. Am I really too cruel? As if talking to herself, Princess Anqi said lightly. Yili said softly, you only did what you should have done. Not only are you Princess Xixia's sister, you are also the queen of the southern Zhao kingdom. That's right. Princess Anqi said with a bitter smile, if I was a soft-hearted person, I don't know how tall the grass on my grave would be. Forget it, let her be. Only, I don't know if we will meet again in this life. Seeing her so sad, Yili had no choice but to comfort her softly. She did not have a close relationship with Yi Zhen, Yi Ying and the others, and they were not born of the same mother. Naturally, she could not understand Princess Anqi's feelings. However, if it were his cousins from his previous life, he was afraid that they would also be very sad. Mo Jingli and Dongfang Yu's marriage was held as scheduled despite Dongfang Yu's unwillingness. It was just that the extravagance of the wedding was not even a third of Mr. Qingyan's birthday banquet. This was not hard to understand. The various countries had just left, and naturally would not rush back just for Prince Li to marry the successor of the infinite boundless mountain. Moreover, with the help of the infinite boundless mountain, Prince Li was their greatest enemy. The fact that they did not secretly cause trouble was already giving face to the Prince Ding mansion and Princess Ding, seeing that Glass City was the territory of the Prince Ding mansion. Why would they specially come to congratulate them? After Yi Li and Imo Xiaoyao attended Imo Jingli's wedding, they left Glass City for Feihong Pass that night. At this moment, outside of Feihong Pass, Dechu State's northern enemy was split into two. The northern tribes and the Mahist army were facing each other. The moment Yellow Yi returned to the northern tribes' camp, he immediately deployed his troops and shifted the northern tribes' defensive line towards the south. On the other hand, Ma Xiuxiu requested for reinforcements from the king of the northern tribes in hopes of defeating the Mahist army in one fell swoop. Yelu Hong also kept his promise and wrote a letter with Yelu Yi to the king of the northern tribes, requesting for Helian Zhen to lead troops to assist Yelu Yi in attacking the Dechu state. Ever since Helian Zhen lost to the 18-year-old Imo Xiaoyao, he was abandoned by the king of the northern tribes. Although his situation had improved in recent years, the northern tribes had not been able to recover for many years because of his defeat. The king of the northern tribes looked down on his abilities and naturally did not put him in an important position. Yelu Yi suspected that Yelu Hong was helping him because of some scheme, but when he thought of the predicament that awaited him after Yelu Hong returned to the northern tribes, he did not care much. No matter what, he really needed Helian Zhen's help now. The reinforcements from the northern tribes would not arrive in a short period of time, but Yelu Yi did not care. He mobilized his troops and prepared to fight a few battles while the Mahist army was unprepared. However, Lu Jingxian, who was guarding the border, was not as unprepared as he thought. When he saw the northern tribes' movements, he also mobilized his troops. In a short 5 days, the two armies had fought more than 3 times. The northern part of Dechu state was once again engulfed in the flames of war. At this time, Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li did not appear on the battlefield. Instead, they were walking leisurely in the northern territory outside the Purple Thorns Pass. After dyeing their iconic white hair black, the two changed their appearances slightly and became a young married couple. However, they were completely different from the imposing Prince Ding and Princess Ding in Glass City. Following beside Imo Xiaoyao and Yi Li was Tan Jiji, who had just been released from the Prince Ding mansion. There were not many people in this world who knew Tan Jiji's true appearance, and most of them were already dead. After 2 years of silence, it was better for people to recognize him. Therefore, even if he was walking in the north with his original appearance, he was not worried about being recognized. It was unknown whether Ren Qining was eager for quick success or was truly confident in himself. Ever since the Northern Army took down the Purple Thorns Pass, Ren Qining moved the capital of the northern region to the most prosperous city in the northeast of Dechu State, Chongqing City, which was only 300 li away from the Purple Thorns Pass. He built the capital here and renovated the palace. Even though the palace was not completely built yet, one could see the embryonic form. There were many luxurious and spacious mansions and official residences in Chongqing City. Their magnificence was comparable to Glass City and Chu Capital City. At the same time, there was a strange phenomenon in Chongqing City. Apart from a very small number of large mansions that were clustered together, the rest of the places were dilapidated. Even thatched cottages and shacks were common. It did not have the feeling of being a big city in the northeast of Dechu State. It was as if other than a few wealthy officials and nobles, there were only poor people who did not have enough food to eat. It was as if the majority of the people, who were not wealthy but at least did not have to worry about food and clothing, did not exist. Not to mention Chongqing City, which was the capital, even a small town in a remote area would not be so extreme. Tan Jiji followed Yi Li and Imo Xiaoyao into an inconspicuous inn in the city. The innkeeper welcomed the three of them to the second floor and had a secret thought. Only then did he greet them respectfully. This subordinate greets Prince and Princess Consort. Yi Li smiled faintly and said, "No need for formalities. You have worked hard these 2 years." The innkeeper said respectfully, "It is my duty." This subordinate does not dare to complain about it. This subordinate has already arranged accommodations for Prince and Princess Consort. Prince and Princess Consort, please feel free to stay there. If there is anything you need this subordinate to do, Princess Consort, please tell me. Yi Li nodded and said with a smile, very good. You can leave first. If there is anything, the prince and I will call you. This subordinate will take his leave. The innkeeper did not ask any more and left respectfully. I did not expect that even in Chongqing City, there are spies from the Prince Ding mansion. The Prince Ding mansion is indeed pervasive. Ren Qining provoked the prince. It is really heaven's will to kill him. Chongqing had only become the capital of the northern region a little more than a year ago. Looking at the situation in the city, it was clear that the first Qi Ning must have eliminated the dissidents through iron-blooded means. Even so, the shopkeeper was still able to stay in the city so peacefully. He didn't even sound troubled or worried at all. It was clear that his management in the city must be very good. Not only Ren Qining, Tan Jiji could not help but feel a trace of depression. Could he really compete with such a person? Chapter 824. The innkeeper's arrangements were very appropriate. The three of them stayed in a secluded courtyard at the back of the inn. There was a door at the corner of another street in the small courtyard, allowing people to enter and exit without arousing suspicion. Mo Xiaoyao's group rested for a night. The next morning, the innkeeper came to greet them again. Yi Li's group had just finished their breakfast. The innkeeper came in and greeted them before asking, "Is there anything wrong with this subordinate's preparations?" Yi Li smiled and waved her hand, "There aren't so many rules when we're outside. Prince and I are used to it." Young Master Tan. Seeing that Yi Li had her own opinion, Tan Jiji could only smile bitterly and say, "Thank you for your concern, Princess. I'm fine." Even Prince Ding and Princess Ding didn't have any opinions. How could he, a prisoner who had just been released, have any opinions? Mo Xiaoyao asked faintly, after Ren Qining returned, "Did anything happen in the northern region Imperial Palace?" The innkeeper's expression turned solemn and he said respectfully, reporting to Prince, "Ever since the northern region king returned to Chongqing, his temper seems to be very bad. As soon as he returned to the palace, he fiercely reprimanded the nobles of the northern region who opposed him. These days, the conflict between the nobles of the northern region Imperial Palace and the old officials of the previous dynasty who followed the northern region king became more and more intense. The northern region king even slapped Queen Helan's face several times for imperial concubine Yun. Now, the situation in the palace is very tense. I'm afraid that the conflict between the nobles of the northern region and the old officials of the previous dynasty will erupt at any moment. It's already like this, yet Ren Qining still has the mood to send troops to attack Bauhinia Pass?" Yi Li asked curiously. As soon as they left the pass, they found that Ren Qining was also mobilizing troops to attack Bauhinia Pass again. It was clear that the alliance between Ren Qining and Yelu Yi still existed. The innkeeper shook his head and said, "Originally, when the northern region king returned to Chongqing, he had already ordered the troops to attack Bauhinia Pass. However, the nobles of the tribes in the northern region did not agree to send troops, so they had not set off yet. In the past 2 days, the king of the northern region attacked the leaders of 2 northern region tribes in the palace. I heard that he only managed to gather all the troops now. Although the northern region army had 1 million soldiers, most of them were from the central plains. However, the real main fighting force was still the people from the northern territory. The millions of central plains soldiers had been forcibly recruited over the past 2 years after they occupied the places other than the Purple Thorns Pass. Not only did these people not have a sense of belonging to the northern region, but they were also not good at marching and fighting. If Ren Qining wanted to attack Redbud Pass, he would need the northern troops to pave the way. Yi Li smiled. This Ren Qining is really, no wonder Dongfang Hui would abandon him and choose Mo Jingli. Entering the north as the prince consort of the northern region, using the strength of the northern region's people to build a country. Now that the power of the nation had not yet stabilized, he couldn't wait to ostracize the people of the northern region. At the same time, he wanted to use the people of the northern region to fight for him. Even if the people of the northern region were not good at scheming, they were not fools. How could there be such a good thing in the world if they wanted the horse to run but did not feed the horse? Mo Xiaoyao said indifferently, I'm afraid that Ren Qining had no choice. I have not seen those so-called old officials of the previous dynasty around him, but I can imagine what kind of people they are. After so many years, they suffered a lot with the orphans of the previous dynasty. Now that they have succeeded in reviving their country, how could they allow the barbarians of the northern region to overpower them? Naturally, they can't wait to get all the power in their hands. Reviving the country. Tan Jiji looked at Mo Xiaoyao with a strange expression. Ren Qining still had the title of the northern region, but he did not even dare to use Lin Yuan's name. How could this be considered a success? Mo Xiaoyao looked at Tan Jiji with a half-smile and said, that's why I said. Master Tan is actually much luckier than Ren Qining. Tan Jiji stared at him with an unfriendly expression. Mo Xiaoyao didn't care and said lightly, young Master Tan may think that you can do better than him if you were in Ren Qining's position, but that's because you're not in his position. Therefore, young Master Tan couldn't understand how painful it was for a person to carry the expectations of the entire family and even the people around him for 200 years since he was born. At least, Dr. Lin has never told you that you have to revive your country, right? Master Tan, you can retreat, but Ren Qining will never have a way out. You are not Ren Qining, how do you know how painful it is for him? Tan Jiji said bluntly. Mo Xiaoyao smiled faintly and shook his head without saying anything. He was not like Tan Jiji, who carried the mission of reviving his family for 200 years. But the descendants of the Mahist army were born with the mission of protecting the Dechu state, so he could understand Ren Qining's feelings and predicament. Yili sighed softly, Ren Qining is also a talent, but it's a pity. A person like Ren Qining is not lacking in scheming and strategizing. If he didn't have those so-called old ministers of the previous dynasty, if he didn't have the responsibility of restoring the country, he could have achieved hegemony in the northern border country just by being the prince consort of the northern border country. He wouldn't have fallen into such a dilemma. But on the other hand, if he did not have those old officials who had assisted the Lin family for generations, Ren Qining might not have such methods and scheming. How could victory, defeat, gain, and loss be clearly described with just a few words? Tan Jiji was silent. Although he did not want to admit it, he knew in his heart that he could not compare to Ren Qining. No matter what, Ren Qining could unify the tribes of the northern region and force the court of the Dechu state to move the capital to Jiangnan. But he had been busy for so many years without accomplishing anything. In the end, he even became Mo Xiaoyao's prisoner. Since Ren Qining is ready to send out his troops, we should hurry. Do you need me to see Queen Helan? Yi Li asked. Mo Xiaoyao shook his head and said, Queen Helan is a smart person. She will come to see me when she knows we are coming. There is no need to rush. Tan Jiji was startled and shook his head with a bitter smile. Even Queen Helan is on your side? I really can't think of it. What reason does Ren Qining have to not lose? Yi Li smiled faintly and said, although Queen Helan is from the northern region, she is a rare intelligent woman. Her intelligence and ability are outstanding among women. Without a doubt, Yi Li admired Queen Helan very much. Compared to Princess Anxi, Queen Helan was more ruthless and decisive. She dared to bet her entire life on marrying Ren Qining and did not hesitate to choose to cooperate with the Prince Ding mansion, which she was not familiar with at all. The saying of Central Plains women that a day as husband and wife means endless devotion for the rest of their lives was nothing to her. So when she schemed against her husband, she would not show any mercy. In comparison, Princess Anxi was much more soft-hearted toward her own family. Tan Jiji sighed and said, there are many outstanding women in the world today. Princess Ding, Princess Anxi, and that Queen Helan really make us men blush with shame. Yi Li smiled faintly and said, Master Tan, you flatter me. How can Yi Li be compared to the Queen of Nanzhao and Queen Helan? Tan Jiji shook his head and said, I feel that Princess Ding is the smartest woman in the world. Whether it was Princess Anshi or Queen Helan, they might be able to rule the world in the end. Even the men in the world would have to bow down to them. However, all they could get was power. Although Yili was only the appointed queen consort, in the eyes of the world, she would not become Prince Sting's vassal. Instead, she was someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Prince Sting. More importantly, not only did she obtain enviable power, but she also had a husband who truly loved her. She had a group of relatives who prioritized her and even had a son and a daughter. It could be said that she had everything that a woman in the world desired, and she had even obtained the best. How could such a wonderful woman not be admired? Chapter 825. When Imo Xiaoyao heard others praise Yili, although he felt a little jealous, he was still happy. Although he only hoped that he was the only one in the world who could see how good Li was, he also hoped that the world would acknowledge Li and not allow anyone to look down on her. Moreover, the current Imo Xiaoyao was no longer the Prince Sting from many years ago who was seriously injured and disfigured. He had been married to Yili for 10 years, so there was no need to doubt the feelings between the two. He was even more confident that there was no one in the world who was more worthy of Li than him. His jealousy was just a kind of pleasure. Li is naturally the smartest woman in the world. Why do I need you to say that? Imo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows and said. Yili glanced at him helplessly and remained silent. She was also very self-aware. In terms of intelligence, she could not be considered the smartest one. What she relied on was that she had an extra lifetime of experience that was completely different from the people in this world. Seeing the faint threat in Imo Xiaoyao's eyes, Tan Jiji could not help but smile bitterly. Even if he had the guts as big as the sky, he would not covet Princess Sting, okay? If it was in the past, he might have some thoughts. However, after being tormented by Imo Xiaoyao for 2 years, he did not have any thoughts at all. Who in the world did not know that Prince Sting valued his princess more than his own life? Who would dare to provoke the Emperor of Xiling? The vengeful spirits and Ren Qining in Xiling City were examples of what had happened. Moreover, Princess Sting herself was not easy to deal with. Those who did not have any ability to provoke her would only be asking for humiliation. Imo Xiaoyao and Yili temporarily stayed in Chongqing City, but they were not in a hurry to deal with Ren Qining. Instead, they left these matters to Tan Jiji to deal with. The two of them were idle and would walk around Chongqing City from time to time. They were also very carefree. On this day, when the two of them were having their meal, the shopkeeper came to report that the vanguard of the Northern Army had already set off for the Purple Thorns Pass. Ren Qining would also set off for the expedition in a few days. Imo Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "He's not worried at all. He's not afraid of a fire in his own backyard." Yili smiled and said, "It seems that even though the people of the Northern Territory are staunch and unyielding, they are not incapable of acting. I'm afraid that Ren Qining only thinks that the people of the Northern Territory don't get along with the old ministers of the previous dynasty. He never thought that they would rebel against him." Imo Xiaoyao said, "In Ren Qining's view, the northern tribes have long been like a group of dragons without a leader. Naturally, he didn't expect Queen Helan to have such ability. Speaking of which, the people of the northern region have long been accustomed to each tribe's own governance. I'm afraid that even without Queen Helan's secret coordination, sooner or later, they will rebel. Go. Send the news to General Linghuai at Redbud Pass," Imo Xiaoyao instructed. Just as the shopkeeper was about to leave, a burst of noise came from downstairs. Seeing the two of them frowning, the shopkeeper hurriedly excused himself and went to check. Imo Xiaoyao suddenly smiled and said to Yili, "Li, let's go take a look too." The two of them went out of the wing room and looked down from the second floor. In the lobby downstairs, several men from the Central Plains in luxurious clothes were confronting several men who were obviously from the Northern Territory. Those people from the Northern Territory were all strong and sturdy. With a scowl, one could tell that they were not ordinary people who could be provoked. However, although those people from the Central Plains looked like weak and fair scholars, their momentum was not inferior in the slightest, and their words were as sharp as knives when they confronted each other. The people of the Northern Territory were not good at arguing, so naturally, they were so angry that their faces turned red and their hair stood up. In a moment of anger, they were about to start a fight. Although those people from the Central Plains were weak, they were accompanied by many bodyguards who were highly skilled in martial arts. Even if they wanted to fight, they were not afraid. As expected, the two sides started to fight as soon as they disagreed. The shopkeeper seemed to be used to this situation and hurriedly went up to persuade them with an anxious face. After he was pushed away, he hid behind the counter and stopped talking. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the lobby of the inn was in tatters and the floor was a mess. These people were so engrossed in the fight that no one even noticed Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao coming down from upstairs. At the counter, the shopkeeper saw the two of them coming down and hurriedly went up to invite them to a more remote corner where they could not fight. Mo Xiaoyao looked curiously at the center of the lobby where the fight was still ongoing. He asked with a smile, "You don't seem to be in a hurry at all?" The shopkeeper touched his forehead and said with a wry smile, "In Chongqing City, there's not a day when there's not a fight. This is already the third time this month that this humble store of mine has been here. If it's a brothel, there's no need to talk about it. As long as the two sides meet, there's no way there won't be a fight. Speaking of which, this inn was a hidden post set up by the Prince Ding mansion. It would be good if it could make money, but it didn't matter if it lost money. If it was really an inn run by ordinary people, they would have packed up and left long ago. Nowadays, the so-called Northern Region King's City was very desolate. Other than those old officials of the previous dynasty and the nobles of the tribes in the northern region, the ordinary people were very poor. There were not many shops in the entire Chongqing city, so the shopkeeper's inn, which was not very luxurious, was often in trouble. Yi Li frowned and said, "Is there no one to take care of it?" The shopkeeper shook his head and sighed, "Who can take care of it? Those who dare to fight in the city are the nobles in the court. The leader of the northern region people is the youngest son of the leader of the former second largest tribe in the northern region. He can be considered Queen Helan's cousin. Those people from the Central Plains are the illegitimate sons of the prime minister conferred by the northern region king and the younger brother of imperial concubine Yun." Mo Xiaoyao rubbed his chin and said thoughtfully, "They are really extraordinary people." As he said this, the people who were fighting gradually moved over. One of the men from the Central Plains was punched by a man from the northern region, and he just happened to be smashed in front of Yi Li. Mo Xiaoyao snorted softly and waved his sleeve. The man's body stopped and fell to the side. However, after the man got up, he didn't rush to settle the score with the man who beat him up. Instead, his gaze fell on Yi Li's body. However, he was stunned for a moment. His eyes, which were clouded by alcohol, revealed a hint of lust. Although Yi Li had changed her appearance, she was still graceful and elegant. Although the young man was the son of a high-ranking official under Wen Qining, he had only seen tall and beautiful women in the northern region for many years. After returning to Dechu State, Chongqing City was poor, but he had never seen a woman with such an outstanding temperament like Yi Li. Even imperial concubine Yun, who was the most favored in the palace, could not compare. At that moment, he did not care that he was still fighting with the man from the northern region. He looked at Yi Li's beautiful face with a lustful expression and said with a smile, "How should I address you, miss?" Yi Li was slightly stunned and could not help but find it funny. She had encountered many things over the years. However, it was the first time that she had been molested in public like this. She could not help but smile and said, "How should I address you, sir?" Seeing that Yi Li wasn't the slightest bit shy like other girls, the man couldn't help but be overjoyed. "This young master is the son of the current prime minister. Miss, why don't you follow this young master to the prime minister's residence for a short period of time? It's better than wronging you in this shabby inn." The man glanced at Mo Xiaoyao who was standing beside Yi Li and revealed a contemptuous smile. The innkeeper at the side shrank back without a trace. The son of the prime minister had been domineering in Chongqing City for more than a year. This time, he ran into the prince and was really looking for death. Chapter 826. On the other side, the people from the northern region who were fighting enthusiastically saw that their opponent had gone to the side to flirt with a girl. They couldn't help but be furious. "Coward, if you have the guts, fight with me for another 300 rounds. I won't argue with you northern region barbarians today," the Prime Minister's son said arrogantly. He could fight with the people from the northern region every day, but it was not every day that he could meet a beauty like this. Although the people from the northern region were not scheming and did not like to beat around the bush, their martial arts skills were much better than the sickly scholar's sons. Their eyesight was also much better in this aspect. They could tell at a glance that the two men were not to be trifled with. Therefore, they were not in a hurry to fight. They stopped fighting and stood aside to watch the show. Seeing that the people from the northern region had stopped fighting, the Prime Minister's son became more and more proud. Looking at the beauty in front of him smiling faintly and elegantly, the Prime Minister's son could not help but feel an itch in his heart. He reached out to take Yi Li's hand, but unexpectedly, a hand reached out from the side and grabbed his wrist. The Prime Minister's son was stunned. He raised his head and looked at Imo Xiaoyao, who had been standing silently at the side. He said, "Who are you? Let go of me." Imo Xiaoyao's lips curled into an extremely cold smile. He exerted a little force, and the Prime Minister's son screamed like a pig being slaughtered. It also startled the onlookers who were watching the commotion from the side. "Bastard! Do you know who I am?" The Prime Minister's son's face was pale and he was sweating profusely. The man in green had only lightly gripped his hand, and his hand. He could clearly feel that the bones in his hand had been broken. Even if Hua Tuo was alive, he would not be able to do anything. "I know, Prime Minister's son." Imo Xiaoyao smiled faintly and gave the innkeeper a look. The innkeeper immediately understood. With a wave of his hand, the waiter who had been hiding in the corner and trembling had already nimbly closed the door of the inn. Speaking of which, it was strange that Chongqing City was too desolate. If such a big thing happened in other cities, there would be many passers-by. However, the common people in this city did not even have enough to eat and wear, so how could they afford to stay in inns and restaurants? This inn was located near the residences of the nobles in the city. Usually, there were very few pedestrians. Even if there were, they would have run away when they saw these nobles fighting. At this moment, such a group of people had been locked outside the inn, but no one had noticed. Occasionally, some passers-by would think that the shopkeeper had something to do and closed the shop. "What are you trying to do?" The moment the door closed, the others also felt that something was wrong. A few northerners wanted to rush out with their strong and agile skills, but how could those inconspicuous workers let them succeed? They were all well-trained people. "You? Who are you?" The Prime Minister's son asked in a trembling voice, his face as pale as paper. Imo Xiaoyao casually tossed him aside and said indifferently, "Are the descendants of Ren Qining's old officials from the previous dynasty these good-for-nothings?" "You, how dare you? Feel free to call His Majesty by his name." Imo Xiaoyao laughed disdainfully, "So what if I call him by his name? I even killed his entire family." "You?" At this moment, the expressions of everyone present changed. Imo Xiaoyao had already spoken like this, so how could they not be aware of his identity? You're Prince Ding." These years, Imo Xiaoyao's reputation was not very good. It was no wonder that these people were so scared. Yi Li smiled faintly and said, "You don't have to be afraid. We won't casually kill people." You're Princess Ding?" the Prime Minister's son asked in a trembling voice. Yi Li smiled sweetly, "I am indeed Yi Li, Prince Ding, Princess Ding. We didn't offend the two of you." The northerners looked at each other, and the leader of the group stepped forward and said carefully. Even if the northerners were barbarians, they were still afraid of death. Even they had long heard of Imo Xiaoyao's reputation, which was comparable to a killing god. Yi Li smiled and said, "Is this young master Queen Helan's cousin? Please inform Queen Helan that an old friend wishes to see her." This young man was also the son of the chief of the northerners. Naturally, he was somewhat shrewd and knew many things. When he heard Yi Li's words, his expression changed slightly. He nodded and said, "This one will definitely do so. May I ask if we can leave now?" Yi Li nodded, "Please go ahead." Seeing that the northerners had indeed left safely, the noblemen from the Central Plains hesitated for a moment. They also stepped forward and tried to negotiate with Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li. Princess, we. Yi Li said, I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to wait here for a while. Everyone's expression changed. Princess Ding, no matter how powerful you are, this is still the northerners' territory. Mo Xiaoyao sneered, I want to detain you. What are you going to do about it? The person who spoke withered. If Prince Ding wanted to detain them, what could they do? Aren't you afraid that the imperial court will come looking for you? Isn't Ren Qining busy preparing for an expedition right now? Does he have the time to look for a few hedonistic sons who have gone missing? The alliance between Ren Qining and Yilu Yi was of utmost importance to the northerners. Even if something serious happened, it wouldn't affect Ren Qining's deployment of troops, let alone a few ignorant and incompetent people who had gone missing. My father will definitely send someone to save me. The Prime Minister's son trembled. The pain in his wrist caused his face to twist. Mo Xiaoyao smiled. Your father doesn't need to save you. I will have someone send you back. Someone come, take him to Tanjiji. He knows what to do. As for the others, lock them up first. This subordinate obeys. The innkeeper stepped forward, picked up the Prime Minister's son, and took him to the rear courtyard. The other people were also taken away one after another, and the messy inn suddenly became quiet and silent. Yi Li smiled at Mo Xiaoyao and said, You plan to use these people to incite conflict between the northerners and the old officials of the previous dynasty. Will it work? Mo Xiaoyao's smile was cold. We'll know if it works after we try. Chapter 827. Queen Helan came to visit on the second day after Ren Qining set out. Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li had already left the inn and were living in an ordinary courtyard in the city. Although quite a few children of nobles had gone missing, they did not know how Tanjiji did it. These nobles all had the same goal and did not report this suspicious matter to Ren Qining. Therefore, Ren Qining did not know what kind of changes had happened in his palace. Complacently, he led his army to attack Zijing Pass. Although the north had not been established for a long time, the nobles in the court, especially the old officials of the previous dynasty, had long lost the fighting spirit to establish a country. They had waited for too long. It was so long that if Ren Qining's generation could not do it, they would very likely give up on this illusory and ethereal dream of becoming a rich country. Therefore, although they were still far from achieving the goal of becoming a rich country that their ancestors had envisioned, they had already established a large country. In their view, as long as they chased away or killed those people from the north, they would have succeeded. Therefore, they had worked hard for too long. Now, it was naturally time for them to enjoy it. Now, in the eyes of these old officials of the previous dynasty, the so-called important matters of the court were far less important than their own matters. They had obtained gold, silver, and jewelry, land and mansions, their beautiful wives and concubines, and their children and grandchildren. They had worked hard for so many generations for the Lin family. Now, it was naturally time for them to reap the rewards. Therefore, no one felt that the matter of their son being kidnapped was very strange, or that some kind of power might have infiltrated Chongqing city. They only knew that they had to save their children and grandchildren. They could not let the kidnappers kill their children and grandchildren. Among them, the current prime minister was the most concerned. Because the one who was kidnapped was the son of his most beloved concubine, who was also imperial concubine Yun's younger brother. Princess, Queen Helan requests an audience. In the courtyard, Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao were sitting across from each other, playing chess. Hearing the report from the guard outside, Yi Li threw down the chess piece and said with a smile, "Let her in." Not long after, Queen Helan walked in with a group of people. Behind her was the leading man from the northern region who had fought in the inn the day before yesterday. It was said that he was Queen Helen's cousin. Prince Ding, Princess Ding. Queen Helen smiled brightly, without the shyness and coyness of a Central Plains woman. Yi Li smiled and said, "Thank you for coming here personally. Please sit." Queen Helen did not stand on ceremony. She sat down opposite Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao and said with a smile, "Prince Ding and Princess Ding are really capable. If my cousin had not entered the palace and told me, I'm afraid I wouldn't have known that the two of you had arrived in the northern region." Yi Li said apologetically, "We came in a hurry and did not have time to greet the queen. Please forgive us." Queen Helen waved her hand and said, "You don't have to be polite with me. I'm very happy that Prince Ding and your highness can come in person. At least this proves that the two of you are sincere about cooperating with the northern region, isn't it?" Yi Li glanced sideways at Mo Xiaoyao. Mo Xiaoyao smiled faintly, indicating that he would leave everything to her. Yi Li nodded and stopped beating around the bush with Queen Helen. She looked at the two people sitting there and asked, "Can Queen Helen decide everything in the northern region?" Queen Helen smiled and said, "The tribes of the northern region have secretly elected my father as the Khan. Even if there is something I can't decide, my father can always decide. Your Highness, please rest assured." Yi Li nodded with satisfaction, but sighed inwardly. The people of the northern region were not as scheming as they thought. At the very least, Queen Helen, her father, and this seemingly wise young man in front of him were not easy to deal with. That's good. The Prince Ding mansion can help the northern region deal with Ren Qining. It will ensure that he and his forces will have no chance to stir up trouble in the northern region. But at the same time, the northern region must promise that after the matter is settled, all of them will return to the border between the northern region and the original Dechu state. I wonder if Queen Helen has any objections? Yi Li said faintly. Queen Helen nodded and said, "No problem. We just want to live our original life. Although we northern region people are not as smart as you Central Plainsmen, we don't want to be used as a tool." Every time Ren Qining went to war, he always had the army of the northern region rush to the forefront. This was because the army of the northern region was braver than the newly formed Central Plains army, but it was also because he wanted to weaken the army of the northern region and reduce the population of the northern region in this way. Now that the northern region had established a country, its land area had expanded. But the people of the northern region were not good at farming, and many of them were not used to the life of the Central Plains. Their lives were even more difficult than before. Although the people under Ren Qining are selfish and insatiable, but many of them are really capable. Moreover, Ren Qining is always on guard against us. Now that he has gone to war, he has taken most of the soldiers of the northern region with him. Most of the soldiers stationed in Chongqing City are from the Central Plains. After 2 years of war, there are only about 300,000 soldiers left in the northern region, but Ren Qining has more than 1 million soldiers from the Central Plains. I wonder what Prince Ding and Princess Ding plan to do. The young man who had been silent all this time asked, but there was a hint of resentment in his tone. There were only about 300,000 soldiers left in the northern region, and this could be considered a gift from the Prince Ding mansion. In the Battle of the Chu capital last year, the northern region lost more than 200,000 soldiers, and at the same time, all the tribes in the northern region hated Ren Qining to death. Yi Li did not care about his attitude. When two armies fought, there was naturally no time for mercy. Moreover, many people from the Dechu state and the Prince Ding mansion had died in order to protect the Chu capital. Between the two countries, there were no eternal friends or eternal enemies. At least for now, when it came to Ren Qining, their goals were the same, weren't they? Yi Li said calmly, "Ren Qining does have more soldiers than the northern region, but I'm afraid that there are not many that can be used." Both Mo Xiaoyao and Yi Li were people who came from the military. Naturally, they knew the difference between the soldiers who had just joined the army and did not know anything and the so-called elite soldiers who had been through hundreds of battles. If they really fought, 10 of the Central Plains soldiers under Ren Qining's command might not be able to defeat one soldier from the northern region. It was not that they were too weak, but compared to the valiant elite soldiers who had galloped through the White Mountains and Black Waters and fought among the various tribes, they were just a group of ordinary people who had just picked up weapons. Moreover, these soldiers were originally the people of the Dechu state. When it comes to important times, they might not be loyal to Ren Qining. The reputation of the orphan of the previous dynasty was good, but that was because the people had a better life after careful management. Only then would they start to miss the distant previous dynasty. But now, Ren Qining had established a country and occupied the Dechu state as the prince consort of the northern region. In the eyes of many people, he was just an invader who looked like someone from the Central Plains. Moreover, the people of the northern region did not have a good life these past 2 years. On the contrary, it was Ren Qining who recruited soldiers that made the people suffer. The area outside of the Bauhinia Pass was close to the barbarian lands and had always been sparsely populated. Ren Qining recruited more than 2 million soldiers in just 2 years. How could the people not complain? Seeing his excited face, Yili couldn't help but have black lines on her face. You're not planning on immediately passing the throne to him, right? She believed that Mo Xiaoyao would definitely do something so unreliable. Mo Xiaoyao hugged her and said with a bit of regret, I really want to do that. Seeing Yili's displeased eyes, he quickly continued, it's a pity that Mo Xiaobao's age is a bit too young. At least wait until he's able to get on a horse to fight, right? How about 14? I won't even be 14 before going to the battlefield. Mo Xiaobao was 8 years old this year. 14 would be 6 years later. What a wonderful thing. At that time, Su Qingchen would still be there. If Mo Xiaobao was smart, he could trick Su Qingchen into working for him for a few more years. Thinking like this, Mo Xiaoyao suddenly felt that the heavens were really good to him. It must be to make up for the rough and unlucky first half of his life that the heavens gave him such a promising second half. Seeing the happy face of the person in front of her, Yili speechlessly pushed him away and walked into the room. Mo Xiaoyao helplessly followed her. Before he left, he glanced at the wall not far away. His sleeves moved and a gust of wind blew. Something fell to the ground with a bang and there was a muffled groan. After sending off Mo Xiaoyao, Yili turned around and walked in. The moment she walked in, she saw Tan Jiji sitting in the courtyard looking at her with a smile. But the way he sat was a bit strange. From time to time, he would reach out and touch a certain part of his shoulder. He couldn't help but grimace. Seeing his strange appearance, Yili faintly raised her eyebrows and said, Why does young Master Tan have time to come over? Chapter 829. Tan Jiji said with a smile, Don't I have something to report to Prince Ding and Wang Fei? I happened to see the prince and Wang Fei saying goodbye. This one did not want to disturb them and could only wait here. Yili looked at the dirt on his dark blue robes and said faintly, Thank you, Tan Gongzi, for waiting so long. It really was a long wait. Tan Jiji gritted his teeth. Seeing Yili sit down in front of him, he couldn't help but raise an eyebrow as he said with a smile, Prince Ding is really not worried about leaving Wang Fei alone in the north? Yili's fingertips flashed with silver light. With a whoosh, it flew past Tan Jiji's face and nailed to the tree behind him. Ignoring his teasing, Yili gave a faint smile and said, Tan Gongzi, do you want to try and see why Prince is not worried about leaving me alone? Tan Jiji quickly shook his head. He had not missed Mo Xiaoyao's words, if there's anyone who doesn't know their place, kill them. He also believed that Yili would definitely be able to kill him. He quickly changed the topic and said seriously, I have already contacted the Prime Minister in the north, and I mentioned a little about my and Ren Qining's identities. Yili looked at him, why would he believe that you are real and Ren Qining is fake? When Lin Yuan was born, the Lin family had experienced a great change. Several family members had taken the young master of the Lin family Lin Yuan and fled. Ren Qining had only been found by the retainers of the Lin family when she was almost 10 years old. Tan Jiji shook his head and said, he did not believe me and does not need to. The previous dynasty has been gone for more than 200 years. Wang Fei, do you really think that it is important whether the orphan of the previous dynasty is real or fake? Those people just... Some can't forget the glory of the previous dynasty and their family, and some have no way out. Even if they did not find Ren Qining, there would still be Zhang Qining and Li Qining. They just need to believe that I can give them more than Ren Qining can give them. I'm afraid that will be somewhat difficult. Yi Li rubbed her forehead as she pondered. Even if Ren Qining was now in trouble, no matter how one looked at it, Ren Qining was still more successful than Tan Jiji and could bring more benefits to others. After all, Ren Qining had the northern border country, while Tan Jiji had nothing. If they gave up on Ren Qining, it meant that those people would have to struggle for another few decades. Would they, who had already begun to enjoy life, be willing to do so? Tan Jiji said with a faint smile, it's indeed very difficult. However, it wasn't impossible. These old officials of the previous dynasty also had conflicts with Ren Qining. These people wanted to chase the people from the northern region away as soon as possible, or kill them all. That way, they would be able to enjoy the fruits of their victory without having to share it equally with the northerners. But Ren Qining was more likely to use the people of the northern region to fight for him. However, the people of the northern region were no fools. If he wanted the people of the northern region to continue working for him, he would not allow Queen Helan to give birth to an imperial heir and make him the crown prince. And it just so happened that those old antiques couldn't tolerate it. This time, Ren Qining brought Queen Helan and imperial concubine Yun back to the palace for less than 2 days before imperial concubine Yun miscarried. The Prime Minister's manor believed that it was done by the people of the northern region and wanted Ren Qining to severely punish Queen Helan. However, Ren Qining was in a hurry to send troops to attack Zijing Pass and suppressed the matter. What's the truth of the matter? Yi Li raised her eyebrows and asked. Tan Jiji said, it's possible that it really was done by the people of the northern region. After all, the people of the northern region would definitely not allow Sir Imperial Concubine Yun to give birth to a prince of the Central Plains. However, it's also possible that Imperial Concubine Yun was tired from the journey and really had an accidental miscarriage. However, who would care about this kind of thing? The people of the Central Plains only wanted to use this matter to denounce the people of the northern region. Regardless of whether it was done by the people of the northern region or not, at least they were happy to see it. As for Ren Qining, he could only keep the peace for the time being. So, the Prime Minister is dissatisfied with Ren Qining? Yi Li asked. Tan Jiji said with a smile, it's nothing much. In the eyes of those people, the country has already been decided. As for who becomes the emperor, it doesn't matter. As long as it can bring them more benefits, there's nothing wrong with replacing Ren Qining with Tan Jiji. Even if they want to climb up and become the emperor one day, I won't be surprised. I'm very sorry, you won't be able to become the emperor this time. Yi Li apologized sincerely. Tan Jiji pouted and said, it's fine. I don't want to be the emperor of the northern region, and I don't want to be a puppet either. He wanted to restore the country, but he didn't want to be a puppet that couldn't make any decisions on its own. Moreover, this puppet had the name of the barbarians attached to it. Seeing that Ren Qining was a little disappointed, Yi Li asked with some curiosity, have you done anything that you wanted to do in your life? Tan Jiji looked at her and said, yes, I've been doing it all this time. The corner of Yi Li's mouth twitched slightly and said, are you talking about restoring the country? What's wrong with that? Tan Jiji didn't think much of it. His biggest dream in this life was to restore the country. Yi Li raised her eyebrows. Just because you made a mistake in the beginning, you will continue to make the same mistake without hesitation? Then if there was a cliff in front of you, would young Master Tan also jump down without blinking? Tan Jiji smiled helplessly and said, perhaps. Chapter 830. Tan Jiji's efficiency was extremely high. Within a few days, he had secretly made friends with many of the influential people in Chongqing City. Yi Li looked at the news sent by the spies of the Prince Ding mansion in Chongqing City every day and couldn't help but sigh. No wonder Tan Jiji was able to fool Mo Jingli, Mo Jingqi, and the Saintess of Nanjiang, Xu Manlin, all these years. His ability and methods were indeed not small. It was a pity that time didn't wait for him. Xu Manlin and Mo Jingqi died one after another, and Mo Jingli suspected them of being abandoned. All of his plans and calculations could only fall short of success. Although he knew of Yi Li's ability, Mo Xiaoyao had always been extremely worried about Yi Li's safety. So when he left, not only did he leave behind Qin Feng, Zhuo Jing, and Lin Han, who usually followed Yi Li, he also transferred over He Su, who was originally guarding the Chu capital. Yi Li didn't make an error of judgment that year. Compared to Zhuo Jing, Lin Han, and Wei Lin, He Su was more suitable to lead troops into battle. In just a short 10 years, He Su had used his own ability to obtain a place among the generals of the Dechu state. At that time, he took advantage of the opportunity when Mo Jingli moved the capital down south to expand without restraint. So when the Chu capital was besieged, He Su was able to lead 200,000 troops to rescue it. In these 10 years, He Su could be said to have completely relied on his own ability to obtain his current position. It was believed that in another 10 years, he would definitely become another Zhang Qilan and Lu Jingxian. With these four people, whether it was martial arts or strategy, they were extremely outstanding. Mo Xiaoyao was also more assured of Yi Li's safety. Wang Fei. In the study, He Su stood in front of the desk, respectfully waiting for Yi Li's orders. Yi Li looked at him for a long time before she smiled and said, "He Su, you are already a great general in charge of thousands of soldiers and horses. Now that you are following me, what do you have to say?" He Su bowed respectfully to Yi Li and said with a serious expression, "This subordinate is able to achieve what I have today because of Wang Fei. It's just that this subordinate was originally Wang Fei's bodyguard, but I didn't serve Wang Fei like second brother, third brother, and fourth brother. Now that I am able to follow Princess Consort and reunite with my three brothers, it is this subordinate's fortune." He Su's achievements over the years could be said to be astonishing. After all, he went from an ordinary person to a commander in 10 years. But these changes were not worth mentioning compared to the great changes in the Prince Ding mansion over the years. He Su naturally did not have any bad thoughts after being transferred by Mo Xiaoyao to Yi Li's side. Compared to other people, they had once been Princess Ding's shadow guard and understood Wang Fei's abilities and position in the prince's heart. To be able to follow Wang Fei was a fortune that others could not ask for. Yi Li smiled faintly and said, "That's good. The reason the prince transferred you back to my side is because I really do need someone to lead soldiers into battle. It's not because I want to take away your military power. When I sent you to the army, it proves that I feel you are suitable for the army. In these years, you have not disappointed me. After this matter, you will go back to lead soldiers. I hope you understand." Yi Li did not feel that everyone in the world should be unconditionally loyal to her without complaint or regret. It was said that a fine bird chose a tree to nest in. Transferring a great general to be a guard was a waste of talent, and it was too presumptuous of her to want him to have no complaints. Even if He Su did not feel wronged, Yi Li felt that she should make things clear to him to avoid any misunderstandings that would make everyone unhappy. This subordinate understands. Many thanks, Princess Consort. He Su was truly grateful to Yi Li from the bottom of his heart. He had originally been a shadow guard of the Prince Ding mansion. If not for Yi Li, even if he was trusted by his master, he would not have become a general. And he found that Wang Fei's original view was not wrong. Compared to being a guard, he preferred to kill on the battlefield. Yi Li nodded and said, "Take my token to find Queen Helan. She will find a way to arrange for you to enter the army in the north. When the time comes, you will know what to do." He Su only thought for a moment and then understood Yi Li's thoughts. He frowned slightly and said, "Princess Consort wants to incite the Central Plains soldiers in the army in the north to rebel?" Yi Li smiled and nodded. "Yes. Also, we only have 1.5 months at most. Therefore, your mission is somewhat difficult. Is there a problem? Hisu thought for a while before saying, the army in the north has only occupied Dachu state for 2 years, but they have recruited large amounts of soldiers to the point that the people have no way to make a living. This subordinate thought that the middle and lower level generals of the Central Plains soldiers would not have any loyalty to the north. If we add on the reputation of the Prince Ding mansion, it should not be hard to convince them. Hearing him say this, Yili nodded in satisfaction. She picked up a file from the side and said, this is a list of the generals in the north who did not go with Ren Qining, and their backgrounds. Take it and do as you see fit. You can tell them that as long as they pledge allegiance to the Prince Ding mansion, this consort will not pursue the matter of them following Ren Qining to attack the Chu capital. Their military ranks and positions will remain unchanged. If they perform meritorious deeds, the Prince Ding mansion will not be reluctant to reward them. Hisu was also delighted. If these Central Plains soldiers said that they were loyal to Ren Qining, it would be a joke. But their biggest worry was that they had followed Ren Qining to attack the Dachu state. They were afraid that the Mahist army would settle accounts with them after the battle. Now that they had Princess Ding's personal promise, they naturally had no worries. After all, compared to Ren Qining, anyone would think that choosing the Prince Ding mansion was more reliable. Putting away the file, Hisu said respectfully, this subordinate understands. This subordinate will leave now. Go. I will send Lin Han and Qi Lin to secretly assist you. If necessary, we can use extreme measures. After all, we are in a hurry. Yes. Chongqing City. On the surface, there seemed to be no difference from usual. But in many places, there were already turbulent undercurrents surging in secret. However, no one knew that all these changes came from the quiet and graceful woman in this seemingly ordinary little courtyard in the city. In the Prime Minister's manner, the current Prime Minister of the Northern Territories looked somewhat doubtfully at the few people before him. Finally, his gaze fell on the white-clothed girl beside Tan Jiji, his gaze flickering. Young Master Tan, this lady is... Without waiting for Tan Jiji to speak, that white-clothed girl said mildly, Prime Minister Yun, this little girl's surname is Dongfang. Dongfang? Infinite Boundless Mountain? That's impossible. The Prime Minister stood up in shock, staring at that white-clothed girl. Beside him, Tan Jiji's mouth twitched uncontrollably. Looking at the Prime Minister, he said with a straight face, why is it impossible? The Prime Minister said, young Master Tan is trying to fool this old man. Infinite Boundless Mountain has long since sided with King Li. How can this lady be a descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain? Could it be that young Master Tan thinks that my northern territories are so remote that we don't know anything? Tan Jiji shrugged, looking at the girl sitting opposite him. The white-clothed girl laughed coldly, saying mildly, who said that Infinite Boundless Mountain can only have one descendant? Moreover, Dongfang Yu's reputation in Glass City has long since been completely destroyed. How can she still be a descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain? This. While he had always been in Chongqing City, the Prime Minister still knew what he should know. Naturally, he also knew what Yili meant by completely destroyed reputation. His brows furrowed as he thought, could it be that Infinite Boundless Mountain is planning to hide behind the scenes? Chapter 831. Looking at the frowning, serious old man before him, Tan Jiji shook his head inwardly. Luckily, he had no intention of cooperating with this old man. Otherwise, how could a person whose imagination would be so happy with just a casual sentence be reliable? The Prime Minister was silent for a while before looking at the two of them, asking, Miss, why should I believe that you are a descendant of Infinite Boundless Mountain? The white-clothed girl asked mildly, Infinite Boundless Mountain's descendants usually don't need the so-called official seal as proof. How does Minister Yun want me to prove it? I heard that Infinite Boundless Mountain's descendants are proficient in the 4 arts, poetry, singing and dancing, astrology, medicine and divination. I wonder if Miss is able to treat little fool. When Tan Jiji had sent that young master of the Prime Minister's manor back, he had already fallen unconscious. The Prime Minister could do anything, but even the famous doctors of the city had not been able to treat him. It was not that he had not suspected Tan Jiji, but afterwards, he had sent people to investigate. His son had indeed been harmed by those northern barbarians, and the poison his son had been inflicted with was said to be a secret medicine of the north that had almost been lost. The white-clothed girl said mildly, "I already know of the poison that your son has been inflicted with. To be honest, I am indeed unable to treat it now. However, Infinite Boundless Mountain has a 1,000-year-old blood mushroom that can treat this poison. After young Master Tan told me, I have already sent people back to retrieve it." That Prime Minister was also not an easy person to fool, but he was a classic example of not letting go until he saw the rabbit. This old man has indeed heard that Infinite Boundless Mountain has a 1,000-year-old blood mushroom. Since that is the case, this old man will wait for Mrs. Medicine. His meaning was that he should believe her identity, and wait until he saw the 1,000-year-old blood mushroom. The white-clothed girl did not mind, nodding, "That is also good. It will take at most 1.5 months to go to Infinite Boundless Mountain and return. I also hope that Minister Yun can keep his word. Otherwise, the price of playing with my Infinite Boundless Mountain." With a cracking sound, the teacup in that slender, jade-like hand had already turned into dust. The white-clothed girl stood up and said to Tan Jiji, "Young Master Tan, since Minister Yun does not wish to talk now, let's go. You and I will go back first. It won't be too late to talk after the 1,000-year-old blood mushroom arrives. Young Master has already waited for so many years, a few more days won't matter." Tan Jiji smiled, "Mrs. Right. Please." The Prime Minister saw that Tan Jiji's smile contained a trace of respect and caution, and his confidence in the white-clothed woman's identity increased by 2 points. Thinking about it again, there was no need for Tan Jiji to lie to him. Before this Miss Dongfang had appeared, he had already planned to cooperate with Tan Jiji. Thus, the existence of the Infinite Boundless Mountain was not the most important thing. Thinking of this, the Prime Minister hurriedly said, "Young Master Tan, Miss Dongfang, please wait. We still need to have a good talk." The two of them turned around and looked at the old man without any surprise. The Prime Minister sighed and said, "Young Master Tan, Miss Dongfang, please take a seat. Let's have a good talk." It was not that he did not want to whet Tan Jiji's appetite, so that it would be easier for him to state his conditions. It was just that they couldn't afford to wait. Ren Qining was indecisive and reluctant to take action against the people of the northern region to restore the orthodoxy of the Central Plains, but the people of the northern region kept pressuring them. These old officials who had been assisting the Lin family for generations were naturally unwilling to share their hard-earned achievements with those barbarians. Ren Qining gradually began to feel dissatisfied with the restrictions they placed on her. It was also because of this that the Prime Minister was moved when Tan Jiji appeared. Tan Jiji was different from Ren Qining. Ren Qining was taught by them from a young age, and had already grasped most of the power of the Lin family. However, Tan Jiji was a complete outsider. Even if he was supported to the throne, he would definitely not be able to grasp the power in a short period of time. When the time came, these old officials would still have to assist him. More importantly, Tan Jiji had no relationship with the people of the northern region, nor did he have any so-called kindness. Naturally, he would not hesitate to take action against the people of the northern region. The two of them sat down again. Yili smiled indifferently and said, "Since the Prime Minister wants to talk, we will naturally accompany him. What does the Prime Minister want to say?" The Prime Minister frowned slightly and looked at the two of them and said, "If we agree to help young Master Tan ascend to the throne, what can young Master Tan promise us old officials? You must know that even if we do nothing now, we can still enjoy glory, splendor, and wealth." Glory, splendor, and wealth? The white-clothed girl smiled coldly, a trace of disdain flashing across her beautiful face. Everywhere the northern region goes, there is no place where the people do not have a livelihood. In terms of prosperity, this so-called northern region royal city cannot compare to the Chu capital, which has just experienced the flames of war. Such glory and wealth, even the Prime Minister thinks that it is not bad? Lady is so outstanding amongst women, in this world, only that princess consort of the Ding Kingdom would be able to match you. The white-clothed girl smiled mildly, before taking her leave of Tan Jiji. Exiting the Prime Minister's manor, Tan Jiji's expression instantly turned ugly. Princess, isn't this pretense of yours a little too big? The white-clothed girl's features were elegant, a smile on her face. Wasn't this the Yili in disguise? That Prime Minister had just been comparing her to the Prince Ding mansion. How would he have thought that the Princess Ding he spoke of was right in front of him? Chapter 832. Yili said with a smile, so what if it's just a pretense? It's fine as long as people believe it. Since it doesn't cost money, the more the better. What thousand-year blood Ganoderma, what infinite boundless mountain helping to restore the people's lives, what alliance with the Dechu state to deal with the Prince Ding mansion in the Western Tomb, as well as that illusory position of queen. Yili was indeed rambling on endlessly. But the important thing was that people believed it. Tan Jiji said, when the time comes, where will we go to find Infinite Boundless Mountain for help? Infinite Boundless Mountain probably wants to tear you and Prince Ding apart right now, right? Yili said with a smile, does young Master Tan think that they can wait for more than a month? When the time comes, how will they still have the time to think about all this? When the time comes, those so-called old officials of the previous dynasty would only be thinking about how to hold on to their names. Yili didn't really intend to help Tan Jiji ascend to the throne. No matter how many days he was on the throne, it would still be different. The Northern Territory would still rise and fall because of Ren Qining. Tan Jiji was silent for a long time, before finally sighing, Princess's methods are good. I believe that at this time, the people of the Prince Ding mansion have already infiltrated the Northern Territory army. Otherwise, Princess wouldn't have appeared to meet that Prime Minister of the Northern Territory. Yili said with a faint smile, young master overpraises me. I have no other choice. We have to break up Ren Qining's power as soon as possible, otherwise there will be trouble. No matter how weak the Northern Territory was, it was still a country, and they only had so many people here. If they couldn't deal a fatal blow to it as soon as possible, by the time Ren Qining reacted, they would also have to bear the consequences. Elsewhere, in a large camp not far from prosperous city, He Su, dressed in the garb of a general of the Northern Territory, was currently pouring wine for a few generals with a smile on his face. After 3 rounds of wine, the atmosphere in the tent gradually became more lively. One of them grabbed He Su's arm and asked in a low voice, "Brother, was what you said last time true?" Hearing this, not only He Su, but the others also stopped, staring at He Su. Obviously, the people who were talking to him were of the same mind. He Su laughed brightly and said, although little brother is new here, I am indebted to several big brothers' care. Do you think I would harm you? That may be the case, but now that we're in the Northern Army, we're constantly being ordered to beat up our own people. It was fine in the past. Mo Jingqi wasn't a good person either. If he hadn't chased away Prince Ding, would we have fallen to this state? But now, we have to fight against the Mahist army. How can we not be afraid? When the Mahist army was mentioned, the others could not help but change their expressions. Last year, they had also gone to attack Chujing. If it was not for the Mahist army coming to help, Chujing would have already fallen. He Su smiled and said, isn't that so? Her brothers probably didn't know about it yet. Back then, the Mahist army had killed their way from Feihong Pass to the Chu capital to help the Chu capital. Along the way, the Northern Army had also suffered heavy casualties. Even when they reached the Chu capital, they still had that kind of power. Now, the Mahist army is waiting at Zijing Pass. It's good enough that they haven't killed their way out, but His Majesty still wants to provoke them. Isn't he seeking his own death by sending these innocent soldiers to their deaths? The others also deeply agreed. He Su took in everyone's expressions and said, brothers, I won't hide it from you. Little brother has already decided to turn over a new leaf and rely on the Prince Ding mansion. In any case, we are all people of the Central Plains. Why should we work for the Northern Army? Besides, the Prince Ding mansion is known for being benevolent and righteous. They will certainly understand our difficulties and won't make things difficult for us. The others looked at each other and said with some difficulty, "That's true, but we don't have a way out. The Mahist army is far inside Zijing Pass. If we want to rely on them, I'm afraid we'll be destroyed by them first." Hisu laughed in a low voice. He took out a token and said, "Brothers, look at what this is." Everyone looked. It was a black jade token with the character "Fix" carved on it. They couldn't help but tremble. Hisu said with a smug smile, "This is Princess Ding's token. Wang Fei has promised that as long as little brother turns over a new leaf, I will definitely be promoted in the future and have a bright future." The people present were jealous and envious. To be able to receive Princess Ding's jade token and promise, Hisu's good fortune was not small. "Brother, we..." The others stared fixedly at Hisu, wanting to speak but hesitating. Hisu smiled generously and said, "Brothers, don't worry. Little brother naturally will not let brothers drink the soup when little brother has meat to eat. We brothers will naturally share blessings and hardships together." "Brother, he is right." Everyone praised in unison. Their gazes when they looked at Hisu became even friendlier. Hisu had infiltrated the Northern Army for less than a month. Originally, it should not have been so smooth. However, he had Queen Helan and the other nobles of the northern region, as well as the old officials of the previous dynasty, led by Prime Minister Yun, who were either actively or unknowingly escorting him in secret. Naturally, his identity was watertight, and he was like a fish in water in the army. Yili also gave him a lot of information. Chapter 833. In less than a month and a half, Hisu had roped in nearly half of the troops near Chongqing. Naturally, there was a lot of bloodshed in the dark, but on the surface, it was as calm as ever. "Your Highness's methods are really admirable." In the small courtyard, Queen Helan sat in front of Yili and said with a smile. Their gazes towards Yili were filled with even more admiration. In just over a month, she could control half of the troops in Chongqing and even infiltrate the stubborn Central Plains people. Queen Helan admitted that she couldn't do it. Although she was from the northern region and was naturally hostile to the Central Plains people, Queen Helan had to admit that she probably couldn't have imagined Yili could do so much. Yili shook her head and said with a faint smile, "Your Highness flatters me. It's just a coincidence that I took advantage of the loophole. It wouldn't be so easy if it were in another place." It wasn't that Yili was modest. In fact, even Yili herself didn't expect it to be so smooth. It was really because the northern region was too loose. Although these old officials of the previous dynasty were well versed in scheming and plotting against others, they and their families were too far away from the politics and power of the court. As a result, the northern region looked good from top to bottom, but there were loopholes everywhere inside. Even if the Prince Ding mansion didn't scheme against Ren Qining, if Ren Qining didn't reorganize himself, the northern region wouldn't last 10 years. Queen Helan said with a smile, "Those who can seize the opportunity are smart people. However, those old men from the Central Plains are the most suspicious. You've done so many things, but they didn't notice." These days, the people of the northern region had been secretly preparing to return outside the pass after they were taken to attack Zijing Pass. On the other hand, they did their best to create trouble for the Central Plains people to distract their attention. But they didn't even notice that their military power had been taken away by others. This was too much. Could it be that all the Central Plains soldiers wanted to rebel against Ren Qining? Then how bad was Ren Qining's reputation? Yili played with the teacup in her hand and said with a smile, "They should find out soon. Don't forget that the Yun family also has a lot of military power. They will definitely find out that something is wrong." It had to be said that this was another mistake of Ren Qining's. Or rather, it couldn't be said to be a mistake. It was something that had to be done. Princess Consort, Prime Minister Yun's residence has sent an invitation to invite Princess Consort to the residence for a chat. Zhuo Jing walked in with an invitation and presented it to Yi Li. Yi Li took it and took a look. It was indeed an invitation from Prime Minister Yun's residence. The dazzling golden post was outlined with an exquisite pattern of auspicious clouds, and it looked rather magnificent. "Where is Tan Jiji?" Yi Li asked. Zhuo Jing said, "Young Master Tan was invited to the Prime Minister's residence this morning. I'm afraid the Prime Minister's residence has already discovered that something is amiss. That's why I sent an invitation to invite Princess Consort over. I want to be a turtle in a jar." Yi Li stood up and said with a smile, "Then let's go meet this loyal minister of the previous dynasty. Send someone to inform Hisu to pay attention to the soldiers and horses outside the city. If there are any accidents, don't be polite. In addition, let Qin Feng block all the roads to the Purple Thorns Pass. Without my order, no information is allowed to be sent to the Purple Thorns Pass." This subordinate obeys. Zhuo Jing received the order and left. Queen Helan also stood up and said with a smile, "I have to thank you this time. I will also go back and let them prepare while cooperating with you." "Oh right, do you still want those ministers of Ren Qining? Can I kill them?" Yi Li smiled faintly and said, "Queen, please do as you wish." She brought Zhuo Jing and Lin Han into the Prime Minister's residence. Looking at Prime Minister Yun's smile that hit a knife, Yi Li didn't care. However, Tan Jiji had already been restrained by someone. Yi Li couldn't help but smile and said, "Young Master Tan, what's wrong with you?" Yi Li didn't believe that with Tan Jiji's ability, he could still be restrained by the people of the Prime Minister's residence when he was on guard. Tan Jiji shrugged with a smile and said, "Aren't I waiting for you to come and save me?" Seeing the two talking and laughing casually, not looking down on him in the slightest, Prime Minister Yun's face couldn't help but darken. He laughed coldly and said, "This lady, why don't you tell me where you are from? Don't tell me that you are really from the infinite boundless mountain?" Yi Li smiled faintly and said, "Since Prime Minister Yun didn't believe me from the start, why bother asking?" With this, the Prime Minister naturally knew that he had indeed been fooled by the two in front of him. Yi Li said that he didn't believe them from the start, but that wasn't right either. He was only half believing and half doubting. It was only because Tan Jiji had a request for him and these two were also in Chongqing City, which could be considered to be under his control, that he didn't care. However, he didn't expect these two to be so capable that they could actually control half of the troops in the north in just over a month. "You are from the Prime Minister's residence?" The Prime Minister stared at the two and asked coldly. Other than the people from the Prince Ding mansion, he really couldn't think of anyone else who had such ability and means. Tan Jiji smiled helplessly and didn't answer. Yi Li nodded sweetly and said, "Yi Li greets Prime Minister Yun. You are Princess Ding." Hearing this, Prime Minister Yun couldn't help but scream and almost fell to the ground. Yi Li was a little helpless. Was her name so scary? Prime Minister Yun fell back into the armchair in a daze. After a while, he sighed and said, "What a Princess Ding. Such courage and means. I think the princess has been planning with those barbarians in the north for a long time, right?" Prime Minister Yun wasn't a fool. The Prince Ding mansion had made such a big move in the north, but they didn't notice it until now. There must be someone helping them from the inside. Yi Li sighed softly and said, "It's not that the Prince Ding mansion is cruel. The king of the northern region and the Northern Tribes Alliance want to destroy the Prince Ding mansion and overturn the Central Plains. This move is really too vicious. If they succeed, the Prince Ding mansion will be attacked from both sides. So, we can only take the risk and cut off their escape route. Please forgive us, Prime Minister Yun. Winner takes all." "Princess, there's no need to say more." Prime Minister Yun stared at Yi Li's beautiful face and said sternly, "Princess Ding has such courage and means at such a young age. Even I have to say that I admire you. However, since the Prince Ding mansion already knows that their status has declined, they still dare to come to the Prime Minister's residence. It seems that they don't respect me at all. Yili smiled faintly and said, Prime Minister Yun is a senior. How can I refuse a senior summons? Good, good, good. Prime Minister Yun said good 3 times in a row. He was so angry that he slammed the table and stood up. He said sternly, since you dare to enter my Prime Minister's residence, if I don't make you stay, wouldn't the dignity of the North be lost? Prime Minister Yun, even if the North's dignity is lost, we are the ones losing face. What does it have to do with you? A female voice with a slight smile sounded from outside the door. Queen Helan walked in with a few people from the north. It was as if the entire Prime Minister's residence had entered an empty space. Prime Minister Yun's eyes narrowed. He stared at Queen Helan and said, I was wondering why you barbarians from the north would collude with the Prince Ding mansion. So it's because of you. At that time, when Queen Helan made a fuss about going to Li City, everyone thought that it was because she was angry with Imperial concubine Yun. No one cared. They didn't think that it would bring disaster to the north. Chapter 834. Queen Helan's pretty face darkened, and she said coldly, Old man surnamed Yun, you're shameless. Your master Ren Qining relied on my cousin and uncle's status and power to become the king of the northern region. That's why you old men have such a good life today. But now you're burning the bridge after crossing the river and pushing out the people of the northern region everywhere. Every time there's a war, you let the men of the northern region rush to the front while you take advantage of the situation from behind. More than 700,000 men of the northern region entered the pass, but now there are less than 300,000 people left. You can't tolerate it and push us aside everywhere. It's really disgusting. No wonder you haven't been able to restore your country for hundreds of years. It can be seen that the gods in heaven have eyes and know that you're all despicable villains. How can they let you succeed in restoring your country? Prime Minister Yun was rebuked by Queen Helan, and his face turned green and purple. The most reprehensible thing about Ren Qining's establishment of the northern region was that he used the power of the people of the northern region. And it wasn't that he had subdued the people of the northern region and made them shrewd, but that he had inherited his father-in-law's position after marrying into the northern region. In this way, it was not legitimate for them to claim to be the orthodox family of the Central Plains. Even the children of the previous queen had the surname of the people of the northern region. How could these old officials of the previous dynasty tolerate this? However, the establishment of the northern region was indeed entirely dependent on the people of the northern region. This made the old officials of the previous dynasty have 2 very strange feelings in front of these people of the northern region. On the one hand, they despised these barbarians of the northern region. On the other hand, they had to admit that they had received great kindness from them. Such complicated and tangled thoughts made these self-proclaimed orthodox people even more intolerant of the people of the northern region. They only wanted to find ways to drive them away as soon as possible. On the one hand, they could restore the orthodox bloodline of the Lin family. On the other hand, what the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. Humph! This old man won't argue with a woman like you. Prime Minister Yun said with an unfriendly face after being pushed by Queen Helan to the point of speechlessness. Queen Helan said disdainfully, It's this young lady who won't argue with an old man like you. The people next to her couldn't help but twitch their mouths. Yili held back her laughter and asked, Queen Helan, why are you here so soon? Queen Helan waved her hand and said, Many of Ren Qining's people in the city have been caught. Those who haven't been caught can't run out now. They are also fighting outside the city. Princess Ding, can your people win? Yili said indifferently, remove the word, what? Since they've started fighting, what are you doing here instead of staying in the palace? Queen Helan sighed. I heard that this old man has hidden a lot of people in his mansion to deal with you. If I knew you were so confident, I wouldn't have come. I'll go back first. Since he had something to do in the palace, King Helan came quickly and left quickly. Having just scolded Prime Minister Yun and lost the resentment in her chest, Queen Helan walked with the wind under her feet. As Queen Helan came and went, Prime Minister Yun's face became even more ashen. Yi Li sat across from him, calmly looking at his face that seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. She faintly said, "Yun Xiang, I don't want to commit the sin of killing. Please give the order for your subordinates to stop. All of you have worked hard for so many years. Why don't you lay down your burdens and enjoy your old age?" Prime Minister Yun sneered. "I've long heard that Qi Lin of the Prince Ding mansion is mysterious and unfathomable. No one can stop him. Presumably, this old man's small prime minister mansion is now completely under the control of the princess. Why does the princess still pretend?" Yi Li faintly smiled and didn't refute. She waved her hand and let people take him away. Chongqing City was in chaos. Queen Helan ordered people to close the palace gate, arrested many of Ren Qining's old officials, and sealed the city gate. Outside the city, the troops under Hisu's command fought with the troops under Ren Qining's former subordinates again. Chongqing City was in a mess both inside and outside. At the same time, the news of the internal strife among the Central Plains troops in Chongqing City reached Ren Qining's troops far away in Zijing Pass within a few days. Ren Qining led nearly 1,000,000 troops to besiege the Purple Thorns Pass. Although his opponent was still Lin Huai, this time it was more troublesome than last time. Last time, Lin Huai's troops were the troops of Dechu State. The two sides were in a standoff for several months. Now, it was the Mahist army that was famous for their bravery. Moreover, Lin Huai had a grudge against Ren Qining for his son's death. Last year, when Ren Qining attacked the Chu capital, Lin Huai's eldest son, Lin Qingyu, died in battle and died for his country. How could Lin Huai not remember such a great grudge? The two armies had fought dozens of times in front of the Purple Thorns Pass, but the army of the northern region had never even touched the gate of the pass. The war here was not going well. Ren Qining also received urgent letters from Yiluyi from time to time. In the letters, it was obvious that he was dissatisfied with the duties and responsibilities of the army of the northern region. This already gave Ren Qining a headache. Ren Qining was so angry that his vision turned black. "Bastard!" Slapping down the letter in his hand, Ren Qining couldn't help but curse. However, the reactions of the generals in the tent were different. Ren Qining's trusted subordinates were naturally worried and anxious, while the generals from the northern region acted as if this matter had nothing to do with them. They couldn't wait to see Ren Qining make a fool of himself. How could Ren Qining not know what these people were thinking? He secretly suppressed the anger in his heart before sending these people out. These generals of the northern region naturally knew that Ren Qining didn't like them, so they didn't care. They all stood up and turned to leave the tent. In the tent, the general of the Central Plains who stayed behind saw Ren Qining's expression and hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, did something happen in the royal city?" Ren Qining gritted his teeth and said, "The cavalry of the Central Plains who stayed behind to guard the camp rebelled." Everyone was stunned and couldn't react for a moment. If it was the soldiers of the northern region who rebelled, they could believe it. But the soldiers of the Central Plains rebelled. But then again, there were less than 50,000 soldiers of the northern region who stayed near the royal city. It was probably impossible for them to rebel. But those people of the northern region didn't rebel. Instead, it was their own soldiers who rebelled. This was truly inconceivable. "Your Majesty, could it be a trap?" Someone asked suspiciously. Ren Qining raised his hand and pressed on the area between his eyebrows that was aching faintly. He said, "This is no small matter. The royal city is related to the lifeline of our army. There are more than 500,000 soldiers left behind. If they attack us from behind, they will attack us together with Lin Huai from the front and back. Our army will be in a difficult situation and may even be homeless. Could it be the people of the Prince Ding mansion who are causing trouble?" Ren Qining sneered. Of all times, something happened at this time. If it's not the Prince Ding mansion, who else could it be? What a Prince Ding mansion, what a Mahist army. Everyone present looked at each other with worry on their faces. Their million-strong army had besieged the Bauhinia Pass for more than a month, but they hadn't made any progress. If Chongqing fell into the hands of the Prince Ding mansion, then they would be done for. Not to mention other things, the rations of more than 1,000,000 soldiers was enough to give them a headache. They would starve to death in less than 3 months. Your Majesty, since the royal city has already sent people to ask for help, I'm afraid they can't hold on any longer. We have to quickly return to quell the rebellion. Although it was important to form an alliance with the northern tribes to attack the Bauhinia Pass, it wasn't as important as their own territory. Chapter 835. Ren Qining understood such an important issue, so did his subordinates. After pondering for a moment, he still appointed a general to lead 200,000 troops back as reinforcements. On the other hand, it was also a test. Ren Qining, who had dealt with King Ding's residence several times, had a deep understanding of Mo Xiuyao's unconventional way of playing his cards. Since King Ding's residence was involved in this matter, he had to be careful of the formalities. After settling the matter of reinforcements to quell the rebellion, Ren Qining sighed and wrote a few letters. He called his subordinates and ordered, "Hand the letters to the princess and the prime minister personally." Chongqing City, Northern Region Palace. Now Chongqing City was controlled by the Northern Region people, and there was a chaotic battle outside the city. The whole palace suddenly became Queen Helan's world. Queen Helan invited Yi Li to live in the palace, so that she would not have to go out of the palace to find her if anything happened. Yi Li did not care. Now Chongqing City was not only controlled by the Northern Region people, but also secretly controlled by the Mahist army. Even a fly could not fly out. The Mahist army also began to secretly clean up Ren Qining's secret forces according to the distribution of Ren Qining's secret forces provided by Queen Helan. These were probably collected by the former queen, who was worried that the forces of the Central Plains would threaten her son's position in the future. She did not want to use them on the Prince Ding mansion. He, Ding Wangfei, take a look at this. Queen Helan lazily sat in the large phoenix chair, waving the letter she had just received in her hand as she looked at Yi Li with a smile. Yi Li raised her head, put down the scroll in her hand, and raised her eyebrows. What did the Northern Region king say to the queen? Queen Helan said with a smile, "He said that the soldiers rebelled and he was worried about my safety. He also said that I must be careful and stay in the palace and not wander around, so as not to have an accident." What else? He probably wants to ask my father and the other tribal leaders of the Northern Region what they think. Yi Li nodded and smiled. He probably wants to test your attitude. Queen, read the reply letter. A reply. Queen Helan blinked and looked innocently at Yi Li. But the messenger he sent has been killed by me. Yi Li smiled indifferently, that's the queen's business. If the queen doesn't want the 200,000 soldiers to come back, you can also ignore him. Queen Helan helplessly slumped her shoulders. While looking for a brush and ink to write a reply to Ren Qining, she said, "Princess Ding, you're so bad." Yi Li laughed and said, "Did I tell the queen that I'm a good person?" Queen Helan ground her teeth. "Can you not call me queen?" "Of course, Princess Helan," Yi Li agreed readily. Queen Helan angrily buried her head and wrote a letter to Ren Qining. The letter was clean and straightforward, stating that the rebellion of the Central Plains had nothing to do with the Northern Territory. If she wanted her father to help, she had to give them satisfactory conditions. When she finished writing, Yi Li came over to take a look and added a few strokes. Copy it again. Although Queen Helan was only slightly proficient in the language of the Central Plains, she could still see that Yi Li's letter contained some faint affection. She could not help but shudder. "Princess Ding, don't slander me. This lady doesn't like that ungrateful bastard." Yi Li raised her eyebrows and said, "Haven't you always acted like this? Now that you suddenly turn hostile and show no mercy, it will make Ren Qining suspicious." Previously, in order to not make Ren Qining suspicious, Queen Helan was always at odds with imperial concubine Yun, faintly showing a jealous appearance. Ren Qining was very astute. If Queen Helan suddenly showed a completely businesslike attitude, it would easily arouse Ren Qining's suspicion, and he would not let go of the 200,000 soldiers. Alright then, I'll suffer for a while. Queen Helan had to admit that Yi Li thought more thoroughly than she did, so she could only pick up the pen and copy the letter again. Helan, come out. Queen Helan was bitterly copying the letter to Ren Qining when a sharp and angry voice came from outside the door. The ear-piercing voice caused Queen Helan's hand to pause, and the half-written letter was immediately stained with a large amount of ink. Queen Helan's face immediately darkened, and she loudly said to the door, "Let them in." In a short while, Imperial concubine Yun angrily rushed in with a few women. They were trapped in the palace and did not know what was happening outside. They were just forbidden to go in and out every day, and they were cut off from contact with the outside world. After enduring for so many days, Imperial concubine Yun finally could not endure any longer. So she brought people to Queen Helan's place to cause trouble. In the end, she was Ren Qining's favored concubine, and Queen Helan did not let anyone do anything to her. Also, most of the attendants in the palace were from the Central Plains. When the time came, she rushed to the entrance of Queen Helan's palace. "Helan! What do you mean? You dare to not let my people out of the palace, do you want to rebel?" Queen Helan put down her pen and looked at her with a faint smile. "That's right, what do you want? How dare you?" Imperial concubine Yun screamed, "Are you not afraid that His Majesty will come back and kill you?" Queen Helan propped up her chin and looked at her lazily. "Don't worry, before Ren Qining comes back and kills me, I will definitely kill you first. Of course, there is also that annoying father of yours. And your father." Glancing at the group of women behind Imperial concubine Yun, Queen Helan curled her lips in disdain. Ever since she became queen, these women had caused her a lot of trouble. Also, at that time, when her cousin was still alive, those concubines often caused trouble for her cousin. Queen Helan did not have a good impression of the harem at all. "You, what did you do to my father?" Imperial concubine Yun was shocked. Queen Helan dared to seal the palace and dared to admit her thoughts with such fanfare. She was definitely not crazy. That meant that she had quite a big trump card in her hand. Queen Helan looked at Yi Li, who was sitting on the side and reading a book, and said with a smile, "I don't have the ability to do anything to your Prime Minister father." Only then did everyone notice that there was a woman in white sitting in the hall. It was just that she was leaning against a pillar and reading a book, and everyone's attention was focused on Queen Helan, so they only noticed her now. Yi Li raised her head, looked at Imperial concubine Yun, and faintly said, "Prime Minister Yun is fine for the time being and is recuperating at home. I heard that Imperial concubine Yun is quite good at calligraphy and is good at imitating other people's words." "That's right. So what?" Imperial concubine Yun subconsciously replied. Yi Li smiled sweetly, "Nothing, I don't have anyone under me at the moment, so I'll have to trouble Imperial concubine Yun to help me write a letter." "Why should I help you? That's not right. Who are you? I seem to have seen you somewhere." Imperial concubine Yun looked at Yi Li with some confusion. After Yi Li changed her appearance had changed slightly, but she still gave her a strange sense of familiarity. Yi Li smiled but did not speak. Behind Queen Helan, a sharp voice shouted, "You are Princess Ding." Chapter 836. "You are Princess Ding." A sharp voice came from behind Imperial concubine Yun. Everyone was shocked. Although they were all ladies of the boudoir, they had all heard of Princess Ding's name. How many times had their fathers and brothers lamented that a daughter should be like Princess Ding, and a wife should be like Princess Ding. Even their husband, the King of the North, Ren Qining, would always speak highly of Princess Ding whenever he mentioned her. This made these ladies who had been raised in the boudoir envious and jealous. Having her identity exposed, Yi Li was not surprised. She just looked up and forgot to look at the woman behind Imperial concubine Yun. It turned out to be an acquaintance. Yi Li faintly smiled and said, "So it was Miss Morong. Why is Miss Morong here?" Like this, it was equivalent to admitting her identity. You are Princess Ding. Imperial concubine Yun was startled. She had also seen Princess Ding a few times. Although her appearance was not quite the same as what she saw now, that calm and graceful temperament that made people have no choice but to look up to her, who else could it be but Princess Ding? Princess Ding, why are you here? After being startled, Imperial concubine Yun quickly recovered and stared at Queen Helan in shock. It's you. You colluded with the Prince Ding mansion. Queen Helan unhappily said, don't say it so harshly. Our North is only cooperating with the Prince Ding mansion to retrieve our own things. What's wrong? You still claim to be the orthodox of the Central Plains. Aren't you also colluding with the northern tribes to attack the Central Plains? Don't say it in such a dignified manner to add gold to your own face. Although Imperial concubine Yun did not understand politics, she was not an ignorant girl who did not understand anything. She naturally understood that if Queen Helan cooperated with the Prince Ding mansion, the fate of her people would be worrying. Helan, His Majesty has treated you well. Why did you collude with outsiders to plot a rebellion? Don't forget, the previous queen also died at the hands of the Prince Ding mansion. Queen Helan disdainfully sneered, treated me well. Ren Qining can't wait to kill all the people of the northern region as soon as possible so that he can change the name of his country and restore his country, right? As for my cousin, if Ren Qining hadn't provoked the Prince Ding mansion, how could my cousin have met with such a tragic fate? If I don't settle this account with Ren Qining, who else can I settle it with? You. You're twisting words and forcing logic. Imperial concubine Yun's face turned red with anger, but she had nothing to say. Queen Helan waved her hand and said, this lady doesn't bully women who can't do anything. You go back and stay there obediently. I won't embarrass you before Ren Qining comes back. If you don't obey. With a sneer, Queen Helan's lips curled into a cold chill. You can also try and see if I dare to kill. Those present were all weak women who had been raised in their boudoirs and had not seen much of the world. How could they withstand Queen Helan's intimidation? They all wanted to retreat. Imperial concubine Yun was not much better. Biting the corner of her lip, she glared fiercely at Queen Helan and turned to leave. Yi Li, give me your life. Next to Imperial concubine Yun, Murong Mingyan roared angrily, and a cold light appeared in her hand as she rushed toward Yi Li. However, a black shadow flashed past. Before Murong Mingyan could touch Yi Li, she was slapped away and hit a pillar next to her, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Zhuo Jing stood in front of Yi Li and said in a deep voice, Princess. Zhuo Jing did not know Murong Mingyan, but just by looking at the hatred in her eyes, he knew that this woman probably had a deep hatred for Princess. He had been with Yi Li for 10 years, but he had never seen Yi Li become enemies with this woman. However, Zhuo Jing only pondered for a moment and understood the identity of this woman. Is it a remnant of the Murong family? Princess, do you want this subordinate too? For this kind of person, the Shadow Guard's habit was to eliminate the source of trouble. Yi Li stared thoughtfully at Murong Mingyan, who looked like she wanted to eat her. Murong Mingyan struggled to stand up and wiped the blood from her lips. Yi Li, you're actually not dead. Yi Li said indifferently, didn't you already know that I'm not dead? Miss Murong, Yi Li hasn't done anything unforgivable to you, right? Why do you hate me so much? Murong Mingyan's eyes were full of hatred. If it wasn't for you. If it wasn't for you, how could my Murong family? How could my grandfather die? It's all your fault. You're greedy and don't feel ashamed to play the blame game. If it wasn't for Murong Xiong relying on his superior martial arts to play with the heroes of the world, what would happen? Would the Murong family be in trouble? It's a pity that the Murong family's beauty trap wasn't attractive enough. You went for wool and came home shorn. Zhuo Jing mocked without restraint. Although he didn't go to Xiling that year, he still knew what happened there. Mocking Murong Mingyan was naturally to stab at the most painful place. Murong Mingyan gritted her teeth and her eyes were almost red with anger. She glared at Zhuo Jing fiercely, wishing she could tear him apart. Yi Li turned to Queen Helan and said, "Your Highness, please ask the others to go back first. I have something to discuss with Miss Morong." Queen Helan nodded and said to Imperial concubine Yun and the others, "You can go back. Ming Xiaorong, stay." Imperial concubine Yun and the others also knew that they couldn't afford to offend Queen Helan now, so they turned and left. Morong Mingyan was left behind, but she wasn't afraid. When she followed Ren Qining back to the northern region, Ren Qining promised to help her get revenge. But in these few years, she gradually felt that her hope of revenge was getting slimmer and slimmer. If it weren't for the fact that she hadn't been conferred a title when Mo Xiaoyao massacred Ren Qining's harem, she might have even lost her life. She used everything she and the Morong family had in exchange for a position that was neither high nor low. How could Morong Mingyan not hate this? "What do you want to say? If you want to kill me, do whatever you want." Morong Mingyan stared at Yi Li vigilantly and said proudly. Yi Li smiled and said, "Miss Morong, you don't have to be so nervous. I won't do anything to you." It had to be said that although Yi Li and Mo Xiaoyao's reputation were almost on par, the difference between the two's reputation was like heaven and earth. Although Mo Xiaoyao had the reputation of the Prince Ding mansion for several generations, his murderous aura was too strong. As long as Prince Ding was mentioned, people would definitely think of the murderous battlefield and countless bloodshed. But when it came to Yi Li, this Princess Ding, even if many people had enmity, it was very easy for them to overlook the danger she posed. Especially when they were face to face, Yi Li's gentle and elegant appearance made it very easy for people to let down their guard. Morong Mingyan lightly snorted. Although she didn't let down her guard, her expression couldn't help but relax. Yi Li smiled and said, "Miss Morong should also understand that the Prince Ding mansion wasn't the fault of the Morong family's defeat. At that time, it just so happened that it had no choice. What's more, compared to the Prince Ding mansion, who was the one who schemed against the Morong family more, Miss Morong should be clear in your heart." Morong Mingyan muttered to herself. Of course, she understood what had happened at that time. If she hadn't insisted on provoking, perhaps she wouldn't have provoked the Prince Ding mansion. But Morong Mingyan had always stubbornly believed that it was Mo Xiaoyao's appearance that decided the Morong family's defeat. So, it was very natural for her to hate the Prince Ding mansion. "What do you want?" Morong Mingyan stared at Yi Li and asked. In other words, since Morong Mingyan didn't intend to reveal the whereabouts of the rest of the Morong family's wealth, she didn't need to live anymore. Don't blame Yi Li for being ruthless. If she had killed Morong Mingyan back then, Ren Qining wouldn't have had so much money to expand his army and attack the Dechu state. If the resentful Morong Mingyan fell into the hands of others, it would be troublesome for the Prince Ding mansion. "Take her away," Yi Li said to Zhuo Jing. Zhuo Jing nodded, grabbed Morong Mingyan, and turned to leave. Beside them, Queen Helan looked at Yi Li with her chin in her hand and said, "This Morong Mingyan actually has such a background that even you want to take advantage of her?" Yi Li smiled helplessly and said, "The king of the northern region is indeed skilled. There aren't many people in his harem who don't have a background." "Then why didn't you agree with her?" Queen Helan asked doubtfully. She didn't hesitate to marry Ren Qining for the northern region. Naturally, she couldn't understand why Yi Li would refuse Morong Mingyan's request. Especially since the people of the Central Plains had the rule of having 3 wives and 4 concubines. Even if they didn't like her, they could marry again. Young Master Qingchen wouldn't lose out. Yi Li faintly said, "There are things that should be done and things that should not be done. Eldest brother has worked hard for Ding Wangfu and me. If I still want to scheme against his marriage for some gold and silver, then am I still human?" Queen Helan shook her head as if she didn't fully understand. "Anyway, I don't understand the thoughts of you Central Plains people. I'll leave Morong Mingyan to you. Anyway, there's no use for me to keep her. She doesn't have any family, so probably no one will save her. Thank you." Ren Qining was very irritated these days. The news from the reinforcements he sent back was not optimistic at all. Just as he had expected, the nobles and soldiers of the northern region who stayed behind in Chongqing City stood by and did not do anything. The only consolation was that Helan's reply to him indicated that at least the situation hadn't reached the worst point yet. Although the leader of the rebel army was extraordinary in the art of war, he didn't have a deep foundation. If the people of the northern region were willing to help, even the Prince Ding mansion wouldn't have an easy time in the northern region. But in this way, the plan to form an alliance with the northern tribes to attack the Mahist army would be ruined. Ren Qining didn't feel much guilt about this. Every man for himself. He couldn't ignore the danger of his own rear for Yelu Ye's plan. If that was the case, even if he caused a certain amount of damage and trouble to the Mahist army, Yelu Ye would still be the one who benefited, and he would still be the one who suffered. He and Yelu Ye were just allies. They weren't really close like family. Thinking of this, Ren Qining's eyes flashed with determination. He stood up and ordered, "Leave one army to cover the rear. The rest follow me back to Chongqing City to quell the rebellion." "Yes, sir." Ren Qining gave the order. Many generals breathed a sigh of relief. If the king insisted on not retreating and the mortals' homes were taken over, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. A few generals of the northern region also had a flash of joy in their eyes. It was just that they were sitting at the back and weren't noticed. Even if they noticed, they would probably just think that they didn't want to fight. On the battlefield this time, the valiant and brave northern Jin Kingdom troops were slacking off. But even so, they were much stronger than the Central Plains troops who had just joined the army and hadn't fought many battles. Ren Qining couldn't leave them even if he was angry, so he had to endure it. While preparing to return to court, Ren Qining wrote another letter to Queen Helan, listing the benefits for the nobles of the northern region. Queen Helan was also straightforward and quickly wrote back to him, agreeing to his request. In any case, Princess Ding had already said that there was no need to pay for lying. On the city wall of Purple Thorns Pass, Ling Huai and Ling Haoyu stood side by side, watching the northern region troops gradually retreat. Ling Haoyu smiled and said, "It seems that the princess's plan has succeeded." Ling Huai's haggard and upright face also showed a smile. He nodded and said, "Yes, we should also prepare to meet up with Princess Ding. Everyone says that the princess's wisdom and courage are not inferior to a man. I didn't believe it at first, but now it seems that it's more than just not inferior to a man. There were probably not many men in the world who were better than Princess Ding." Ling Haoyu nodded and said with a smile, "Isn't that so? The princess is always unexpected, but it makes people feel that it's reasonable. Father, we should also prepare to come out." In the past, it was Ren Qining who came to attack Purple Thorns Pass. This time, we have to come out and chase after him. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.